Thank you everybody for coming. We're going to call this meeting to order if Pam says it's okay at 6:03. We would like to thank Grassroots for broadcasting our meetings live and for rebroadcasting. Go to www.grassrootstv.org. Search for Basalt. Our meetings will be shown there and on our website at www.basalt.net under Agendas and Minutes. Taylor Gregg is our videographer this evening. Taylor! And I don't think this pays a lot, so we appreciate it, yes. Also a reminder that the day after we have meetings, on Wednesday morning at Saxy's at 8 o'clock, the mayor is hosting coffee. I will pay for people's coffee if you will come and talk to me. And it's at Saxy's across the street, 8 o'clock tomorrow. Also, we would like to recognize Perry Will and Matt Yamashita of Colorado Parks and Wildlife, that I still call DOW, who are joining us this evening. Where might they be?
They're here somewhere.
In the hallway, probably.
Well, they were getting some of our chickens, so I know they're here. Okay, well, if they come in, would somebody wave?
Oh, she just introduced you.
Just recognizing them.
All right, we're just recognizing you. Okay, thanks, guys. Okay, so Pam, can we get a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Start with Gary Tenenbaum.
Here. Sorry, I drank something. I'm not usually first.
That's true. Herschel Ross.
Here.
Rick Stevens. Ernie Brower.
Here.
Rob Levitt.
Yes.
Mark Kittle.
Here.
Kathy Mitchell.
Here. Okay, our next item is council comments, reports, and disclosures. Does anybody have anything? Rob?
I left some particular cards in the back for you guys too. If you don't have it, and live in the valley, it's a great thing. So that's courtesy of our friends in the Basalt Emergency Management Committee. Sign up and you get alerts that you choose about traffic, weather, emergencies.
Thanks, Rob. It is great service. Anybody else down here? Okay. So if there's any more council comments, we would like to introduce Louis Meyer and Chris Lehrman from SGM, and they, I know, are here, correct? If you just want to say hi. They're going to be presenting later, having a discussion later in this meeting, so please hang around. Our next item is citizen comments for items not on the agenda. So that wouldn't apply to issues that are going to be on the agenda that we are going to discuss for sure. Yes, sir.
I'm not here to talk about the building of Metropolis. I'm here about a safety issue.
Yes,
I
sir.
live across the street. I've owned my condo for 26 years. I spend a lot of time on the balcony. Last Friday, I almost seen a woman get killed by yet another speeding, out-of-control truck. The last time I was here was when a little girl came out of Wiley Center. That was 2 years ago. I suggested a speed table be put in. I don't recall who was on council at the time, but I was told, thank you for your input, Mr. Fritz. But that's all part of the master plan. Well, I don't know when you plan to insert your master plan, but you got a problem out here. And people are now using it as a shortcut. Instead of stopping at a four-way stop sign, they now go down and they run the stop sign. Sometimes they cut through Merino Park. They never cut speed. So I'm going to ask you, don't thank me for my input, do something. Let me come back next week, next meeting, and thank you for a quick decision on doing something for the safety of people.
Do we have your name on the record? Just
Russell Fritz.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fritz.
I was here 2 years ago. Same deal.
Thank you.
See you in 2 years.
See you in 2 weeks.
Okay. I hope I can say thank you. Thank you.
Okay, other comments for items not on the agenda? Yes. Just say your name, please.
Sandy Kaharchak, and it's concerning just Lions Park, so I don't think it's something that was presented 2 weeks ago, but I wasn't here and it was discussed. So I was hoping that I could just show.
Okay. Yes, you know this won't be a discussion, it's just going to be you commenting.
That's
okay.
fine, that's fine. First, I just really want to say thank you all for your service, because you're on the hot seat, you know. I know that, I see that. But anyway, thank you very much. I wish I could have been here 2 weeks ago when you did discuss the option for Lions Park and a very primitive drawing that I had presented earlier, and when it was discussed.
It was your card.
It was me.
Okay, nice to meet you. I
It
like
was
your
me.
drawing.
Thank you. Great. I hope you like this one too. But no. So anyway, I developed it some more after hearing the pros and cons of it, and from the analysis of DHM designs. So I just want to I just want to present my second submittal. It's much more detailed. I have top 10 reasons that you might want to consider it. And also then I have a topographical illustration showing how it would work. But let me just, first of all, just put it up so you understand what I'm talking about. I'm a frustrated watercolor person. So
You're actually very good.
no, I'm not. I love that kindergarten here. But if I could, if you don't mind, put it up here.
If you want me to hold it, I'll figure it out.
Okay, so it was, like I said, it was really small when I presented it before.
so everybody can see what she's talking about?
And I just would like to, see, he laughed. But I just like.
He was laughing at me.
Susan, you all.
Susie's is doing her dialing for dollars.
For these top 10 reasons.
It used to be a late night, I was going to say David Letterman, counting down the top 10 reasons.
And so basically, I just went into that it would make almost all of Lions Park open instead of having a building filling half of it. There wouldn't be any trees cut down. It could be one building or two buildings. I know that was one of the options was, well, maybe we can make two buildings out of it so that there could be a vision in between. That wouldn't have to be done. But I think number one on this plan is that it provides ground level parking of probably at least 25 to 30 spaces and more that we're really going to need here. If it's tucked up back against the hillside, that would really be great for tuck under parking. It would also make Midland Spur more of a connection, walking woofer, hopper, whatever we call it, down into this area here, the polygon area, because it would come right out at that point. It's pretty much in scale. I tried to be as scale as possible. It would make the view plane to downtown double of Lions Park from what it would be otherwise. It would also open up a big area as you're coming into town on Two Rivers to completely see downtown, just as you're coming in. There would be no buildings blocking it. The chamber caboose, we can't forget that, but it would be able to be right kind of in an area where it needs to be, where there's parking, you're next to the new river development, it's seen, easy to get to, and it would also make that whole park handicap accessible. I'm not sure if the plan is to fill it up to sidewalk level, but I think that it would almost, that would be great. That's kind of my opinion. But like I said, I just thank you for your work. I just wanted to drop that off. And so you guys, yeah.
Thank you, Sandy, and I'm pretty sure from our last discussions with the Planning Commission that they are incorporating and considering your renderings, so you're going through a lot more work than most people do who have just an idea, so thank you very much.
Well, sometimes if it's illustrated, you see it.
Right. Other comments from, yes, sir.
My name is Doug McDonald. I'm a Basalt resident, and I'm concerned about Resolution 43 on tonight's agenda that nominates Lowe Enterprises as the developer of record in another pre-development agreement. Given that Resolution 34 specifically provided that a broader range of development possibilities and intensity be considered in the financial review of possibilities, it simply seems premature to select a single developer, and especially one who might not be geared for the smaller options. Thank you.
And just for the record, that is on the agenda, so maybe, I don't know if we just can move that comment to that part of the agenda, but thank you. Anybody else? Comments for items that are not on the agenda? None. Okay. Hearing none. Our next set of items is the consent agenda, which is a resolution of the town approving the comprehensive sign program for Basalt Parks, Open Space, and Trails, as recommended by the Post Committee, which has already been before us, and approval of a special event permit for the Midland Avenue Car Show on Saturday, August 29th, also been before us. So those are just consent items at this time. Is there a motion to approve, or is there questions?
Mayor, I move.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I was just wondering if we'd had a chance to run this by the Basalt Downtown Business Association. I mean, it sounds like fun, but it is closing a street on a Saturday night. Is that right? Which is kind of like having the World Cup in February.
So the events were well vetted by the Downtown Business Association, and they were on the list. The car show was on the list that you guys approved with a resolution. I can't remember the number, but a while back. This is actually the conditions. So the BPA has looked at the car show, and they're very much in favor of closing the road.
It does sound like fun. Thank you.
Was there a motion started over here, Bernie?
Mayor, I move that the town council approve consent agenda items 5A and B.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thanks, guys. The next section is ordinances. The first reading of ordinance 15, an ordinance of the town approving a contract for the purchase of Unit 324, Riverside Plaza, Lot BC condominiums, located at 355 Goldberg's Court, and I bet that's probably you. Okay, Judy.
So this is the seventh unit in the same building. It is a one-bedroom, and will be the same as the others for price, etc.
Would you mind giving 3 sentences since we have a crowd of what that
Sure.
means?
So Bernie had asked that we do the square footage and prices. This is a one-bedroom that will be going for $220, and later in the agenda is the work session on the part of who's going to be in the units, and as part of that is the square footage.
Okay, super. Yes, sir.
Is it a public hearing?
Let me flip back here.
No?
It's the first reading.
It's the first reading. I move approval on first reading of ordinance number 16 and book it for a second reading on the 25th.
Actually, ordinance 15, sir.
Sorry.
15.
Yes, ordinance 15 serves the 25th.
Second.
Lots of 15s.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Judy. Resolution 7A, a resolution of the town supporting enforcement of Basalt Muni Code, Chapter 7, Article 8, titled Wildlife Protection. Chief Greg Knott, Perry Wilk, Matt Yamashita.
You can get another seat, Chris. Well, maybe not.
So sorry, we were out in the hallway. It's a packed house.
That's all right. We recognized you when you were probably still. So, what do you got for us?
So tonight, before you is a resolution to support the enforcement of our existing ordinance for the wildlife protection in Basalt. Over the past 2 years, the police department and Colorado Parks and Wildlife have worked very closely together to try and lessen and reduce the number of wildlife-human encounters throughout town. We've done a barrel run program, we've done many educational meetings, we've been at the Sunday market, we've been outside the grocery stores trying to get people to voluntarily come into compliance with our wildlife ordinance. It's been minimally successful. We have a lot of repeat violations. We have people that just are not coming into compliance with the existing ordinance that we have. So before you tonight is a resolution to support enforcement of that ordinance. And what I mean by enforcement is the issuance of, as stated in the ordinance, is of a warning, the first offense. The second offense is a summons to the Basalt Municipal Court. I've spoken with the municipal judge and the municipal prosecutor. If a person does receive that first summons, they will appear in court. The judge is agreeable to dismissing that charge if they come into compliance with an approved trash refuge container, and they can show proof that they purchased that. That's the only way that I think we're going to gain ground on this problem. With us tonight are the two experts from Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and they can speak a little bit more to the fact that enforcement is the #1 way to reduce these encounters and these interactions. So with that, I'll give it to Matt or Terry.
I'm Matt Yamashita. I'm the local district wildlife manager for the Basalt area here. As Chief was mentioning, enforcement is it's a necessary evil of sorts. We've attempted to do a lot of the educational outreach portions and in the trash component of reducing human-bear conflicts, and it works to some degree. What we've found is that it only works to the degree of we're already reaching the people that know the ordinance and they're actually respecting the ordinance and are already in compliance. We're not touching the portions of the communities that are actually needing to come into compliance. So one of the things that we as an agency locally here, we've gone through and biologically we've tried minimizing the number of bear conflicts by reducing bear populations. We do that. We manage wildlife populations through hunter-harvest, and locally around here, one of the large issues that we have is that regardless of how many licenses we provide for hunter-harvest, we can't get an effective harvest on these bears that are nuisance bears, primarily because a lot of these bears in bad years, they're within city limits, which precludes any kind of discharge of firearms. So we're not targeting the right bears when we are gaining harvest, and frankly, a lot of the bears that we're harvesting are the bears that aren't the problems. They're the ones that are actually up in the woods where hunters are able to get on, and we're not targeting the bears that are coming into towns in these years. One of the trends that we've seen in past years is that regardless of what the natural environment is producing for the year, whether we have a good food year or a poor food year, we still have a number of bears that recognize the food sources, the artificial food sources that humans can provide here in town, and they make the decision to come down into town regardless of whether there's food available on the mountains or not. We may have fewer calls, but we still have calls in years that we probably should have 0 bear-human conflicts. Local communities around here, we've teamed up with some of them, helped them kind of reorganize some of their ordinances and put in place ordinances. Glenwood Springs and Carbondale being the most recent, but prior to the past couple of years, they did not have any ordinances which specifically addressed trash violations and trash issues. One of the things that they ended up doing was they put these ordinances in place, Carbondale a couple of years ago, Glenwood Springs here this past year, and their ordinances, they were pretty strict. They were specific on bear, what the bear problems were. In Glenwood Springs this year, they have a fine scale where, similar to Basalt or the existing Basalt ordinance, if somebody was in violation, did not have an approved trash container, then they were being fined $50 for the first violation, and subsequent violation was $500 for the second. So based off of that, I talked with their code enforcement officer, and this summer, from when was it? It was beginning of summer until July 24th, she'd written 42 citations, all of which, excluding 41 of those 42 citations were first violations, and only 1 was a second violation. So it was, the nice thing that they were seeing was that all it took was 1 person receiving a citation, and they were gaining compliance, and people were going out and were paying attention to what the problem was at hand. It was getting the message across, and further, our local district wildlife manager down in the Glenwood area, Dan Cacho, he was commenting that in doing patrols down there in areas where they historically had a lot of bear activity, especially come later summer and fall, some of these areas, the number of calls have been reduced drastically. And when he's going down and doing patrols on some of these back alleys and streets, the number of trash cans that are being put out before the evening before, and the number of trash cans that are unsecured, it's minimal. And if people see him or somebody else coming, everyone's aware of the new ordinance, and he'll watch them run around in front of him and hurry up and grab their trash can and put it in. But that being said, at least the point is that they're getting the knowledge out there to the public, and people are compliant and are at least aware of what they're supposed to be doing. What we've been struggling with here is we've put these educational opportunities out there, and the attendees to these public meetings have all been people that are either currently on our bear aware teams or have been in us, helping us as volunteers go out and spread the bear aware message, and they're not really our target audience. So,
Matt, can I just ask one other thing? I'm really strongly in support of enforcement, and you've talked a lot about the administrative side of this, but you really haven't talked about the ultimate price that the bear population pays on human-bear conflicts, which is you take them out and shoot them or we'll kill them or whatever. And that, I mean, I don't know that everybody gets that, and it's not fun to hear about, but we need to hear about it because that's why we're doing this.
Certainly. We as the Wildlife Management Agency, charged with managing the state's wildlife populations, per our bear policy, we were given the discretion to determine whether we have a problem bear, a nuisance bear, or a dangerous bear. Most of the situations we're discussing here where bears are getting into trash, bears are getting into bird feeders, those kinds of things, it's more of a nuisance situation. We're conditioning these bears to come back into towns. What we end up doing as an agency is if we'll try to address the problem, a lot of times we'll set traps out there, try to trap these bears, and if possible, relocate them. And when I state if possible, if it's a bear that we can trap. Some of these bears, they've been around people, they've been around traps, they've been around towns. They won't go into our traps. And the second component to that is once we do successfully trap one, they're not always welcome elsewhere in the state. By far and away, a lot of western Colorado they've got a lot of bears. They have their own bear issues. And whenever we go to relocate a bear, we're charged with calling up our fellow officers throughout the state and finding suitable bear habitat and finding areas where they're willing to accept a nuisance bear into that particular community or that particular portion of the world. Fact of the matter is there's not a lot of those places left. And so we oftentimes, especially in bad years, we make those phone calls and we can't find anywhere to take these bears. Kind of leaves our hands tied. We don't really have an option of relocating bears in suitable habitat or where they're not going to repeat the same behavior elsewhere. Second step to that is that if we have a bear that returns, it's a repeat offender, after the first time we ear tag them, if that ear tag bear comes back down into town and starts creating issues again, even if it's not a dangerous situation, if it's repeating that same behavior, obviously hasn't learned anything new, then by policy we have to euthanize that animal. So we don't have any discretion on that one. We can't relocate it again even if we want to. That animal automatically is euthanized. Locally here in the Roaring Fork Valley, we see a lot of home entries where doors are left open or cracked or unsecured, or windows are left cracked open, and bears gain entry into an occupied dwelling, into a house. And on those ones, because it's a public safety issue, those ones get no second chance and are automatically euthanized. And so every year, those are kind of the two components that we have to deal with locally here. All it takes, really, what we've seen is it takes one time for that bear to learn that behavior, one time of accidentally pushing on a door, getting inside, one time of being drawn in close to the houses because of the trash left outside, and that bear remembers where it was rewarded and what behavior it was rewarded for, and it ends up ultimately returning, repeating the behavior, starting down that trend of what we just discussed, and kind of leaves us where we are now.
Yeah, Gary.
So, everyone thinks with the wet year you get great habitat, and so they should all be up there, but what's the reality of what's going on in the natural world, and also how many bears calls have you gotten in the last week or two?
So the hardship about it is that, all of us always, every spring, we're praying for a wet spring, wet summer, thinking that that's going to help us in all regards. This year, we had a great wet spring. We didn't have any late frosts. Generally speaking, those are the two things that we as wildlife managers are looking for in berry production, surface berry, chokecherry. And all of our prayers were answered this spring. We got exactly what we wanted. And yet, if you travel up into some of the surrounding hills around here, take a look at the service berry communities, the chokecherry, we have fairly minimal production. Speculation, maybe due to lack of pollination, but for whatever reason, regardless of what's going on out there, we had the water we needed, we didn't have any lake frosts, we can't really point fingers at anything else, and yet we still don't have the natural food sources available. So we still have bears coming into town, and actually I was talking with Councilman Tannenbaum earlier, and just today alone responded to 5 bear calls locally here in Algebel and Basalt. So bear issues are picking up, even in a great year like this year, where we should theoretically have natural food sources available.
Yeah, for sure.
And Chief, this is not any new legislation or ordinances. This is just to reinforce what we already have on the books. I can't imagine anybody being against this. My own experience on the bright side of things is that bears are really smart. And if they can't get into your trash, they don't even come back. They know there's nothing there. I used to live in a complex that had a wooden shed with the dumpsters, and after we changed the doors on us so that they couldn't break them in anymore, they never came back. I mean, not even once to try it again. So I think this is the way, and I can't imagine anybody being against it.
Yeah.
The bears that you euthanize, do you harvest the meat, or are you able to?
If we can, we'll try to donate that meat off. We have a list of donation recipients at our office, and we'll try contacting people. People don't really jump up and down and go crazy for bear meat. If we could disguise it as a deer or an elk, I think we'd have some success. But there's just that mental stigma about eating bears. The other side to that is that the majority of the bears that we're euthanizing, prior to euthanization, we end up tranquilizing them just so that they're immobile. And because we have drug in their system, we can't donate that meat out. So.
So depressing. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were
Rob.
Rob.
Rob, then first.
Now, assuming we agree on this tonight, you come back in a year and let us know commitment from it.
I would love to. Yeah, it's something that's on the books, and there's a lot of, lots of the bear calls I go to in town, people are aware of things, they tend to forget about it. And I'd love to provide an update and do it on kind of on an annual thing.
One of the things I want to do through this is also evaluate our ordinance. Our ordinance was drafted in 2000, and through this process to see if we need to make revisions to the ordinance where Glenwood Springs and Carbondale specifically address bears. They make specific recommendations and requirements on trash cans if we need to do something like that. So it's going to be an evaluation of our ordinance along with this, and we'll definitely report back.
Bernie.
This is more for the chief. Okay, so I have a tote which has a little plastic rim around it, which in my mind doesn't make it at all bear-proof. Is that all I need to do, is put it out the morning and pick up with that little plastic rim around it to comply?
That's an evaluation that we're going to do to see what the trash cans that we have in town. And no, that's not enough. The bears know when the trash comes. So on Tuesday at 6 a.m., everybody's trash cans go out, and the bears come down that street. On Thursdays, they go over to this street because there's 20,000 calories in each trash can. So that's where this evaluation of our ordinance to see if we need to do specific guidelines on the grizzly bear, what's the title?
It's the IGBC, the Interagency Grizzly Bear Committee.
And so they certify trash cans to be bear resistant up to an hour with grizzly bears. So that's this evaluation of this ordinance. The bears that we have now, we don't have grizzly bears. We have black bears that know that they can just bang one of those rubber band ones and it pops open within about 2 minutes.
So is that my responsibility to go out and buy a new one, or is it that up to the trash hauler?
It is your responsibility. With the trash haulers we haven't had good success with, and that's something that we're continuing to work towards, is to get them to supply those approved trash containers.
This to me is the biggest public information issue that I've seen in this proposal. How do we let the public know that, and what do we tell them is going to be good enough?
And we have the printouts from the certification that has lists of approved trash cans, and these are the best of the best. The officers will be taking those with them when they're issuing the warning, that one warning, and saying this is what we need you to do to come into compliance at the highest level so that we don't have these issues.
So then I'm probably not in compliance, and I need to,
If it's in your garage,
it's in my garage until
the morning
the
of
morning
trash
of the
pickup,
trash
then you're in
pickup.
compliance.
Then I am in compliance.
But if you leave it outside of the garage or...
No, it's always
structure-
secured until the morning.
Yes.
So then I don't have to meet that highest standard.
This is for the storage outside.
Okay, that answers one question. Second question, is this section 7.169 prohibiting the feeding of all birds any time of year by everybody?
So I believe what you're referring to is the recommendation of how bird feeders should be set up.
Well, it says feeding birds and wildlife. Section 7169.
The guidelines provide additional.
And then if you look at the next attachment exhibit B, which is bird feeding, and the guidelines that were approved by council when the ordinance was adopted and the guidelines were set, this one states what the actual bird feeding requirements are.
It's on 39 and 135. Want me to show it?
Yes, Tom.
Bernie, after the same thing caught my attention. The first sentence of,
It's right here. It's addressed.
the first sentence of 169 appears to be overbroad, but it's qualified by the provision of the guidelines that makes it clear that the normal bird feeder is not a problem unless you're notified that it is.
Okay, so that answers all the questions, thank you.
Others?
I'll make a motion
Thanks.
to approve resolution, what was this one?
42.
42.
42.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Fair
Thanks for
warning
showing
out
up.
there, you got fair warning. Thanks, guys, for coming in.
You gonna try to get the baby?
Okay, our next item is Resolution 43, a resolution of the town approving a pre-development agreement with the Roaring Fork Community Development Corporation and Low Enterprises. Mike Scanlon.
So this item relates to a resolution that was passed at the last council meeting, Resolution 34. And one of the items that was outlined was that the town manager was supposed to bring back at the next meeting a pre-development agreement related to the cost sharing, and I'll get the terms right, cost sharing and reimbursement for the town's expenses related to the ongoing development of the town park and private development. And above that section was a section which sort of outlined the work that the town's financial advisor was to do, specifically related to a map, which was also identified as the map that was in Resolution 19, which is that map. So that map is Exhibit A in the pre-development agreement, and then Exhibit B are the actual costs that have been incurred related to the CDC parcel and the allocated costs related to that portion of the overall river project to be allocated to the CDC parcel. One of the questions that I got today, which I think I answered yesterday when I sent an update to the town council, was the fact that there wasn't an expiration and there needed to be one. And the expiration that's included tonight is December 31, 2015, which corresponds to the option that Low Enterprise has with the CDC on the purchase of the parcel. Another question I had received was there any existing pre-development agreements associated with this property? And the answer was yes, there were actually 3. The first was with Realty Capital LLC, Richard Myers. And as part of that agreement, there was a due diligence that the town would do in terms of making sure that Richard and Realty Capital could do the project. And if you remember, we sort of did that, and we got to the point where it wasn't Richard that was going to be able to develop the property. It was actually going to be Presidio out of California, and we replaced Richard with Presidio. Presidio's agreement expired. We also had agreement with the Roaring Fork CDC related to them developing the property, and that also expired. So there were basically 3 parties at one time that were going to develop the CDC parcels, and all of those either expired or were terminated for one reason or another. There's been a lot of discussion about what this agreement is and what this agreement isn't. And I've received a lot of emails and a lot of concerns. So one thing that I did today, because I think what happens is we have been using pre-development agreements as our standard procedure for reviewing applications, and whether it's affordable housing, continuing care retirement centers, RMI, in terms of their development of a town parcel and the swapping of assets. We've been using them to sort of, 1, who is it that we're working with? 2, what is it that we're working on? So all this basically states is that there's a property owner, that's the Roaring Fork CDC. They have an agreement with a developer, an option to purchase, and we're willing to work with them to look at that parcel within the framework that was established in Resolution 34. And I might have Bruce talk a little bit about sort of the option matrix that we're working on.
Okay, Bruce.
Good evening, Bruce from Hellers. Just going back to the memo that I did, that I believe was attached to the resolution that you passed a couple weeks ago. We're in the process of looking at 4 representative development scenarios, or land use scenarios ranging from complete open space to a fairly low density use to a use very similar to what the Planning and Zoning Committee endorsed as a concept to a higher density use. To give you a sense of the public costs and benefits from the town's perspective that would be involved with each of those 4. It's not to say that we expect any one of those 4 to happen as envisioned, but it's really meant to be more placeholders or milestones along a spectrum of potential development or lack thereof, and to better facilitate your understanding of what that would mean for long-term town investment and town benefit in terms of additional tax revenues and other revenues. So we've had a number of discussions. We're starting that analysis, and I think we are on track, I think, to meet the 2-month time frame that you had envisioned being back here at the September 22nd meeting. I'm hoping actually to have some discussion ready on some of the analysis by September 8th. I'd like to talk these things through before getting to a final report, but again, it's really just to help you better understand some of the trade-offs, the pros and cons of these different levels of investment as it relates to the town's finances.
Thanks, Bruce. Anybody have any questions for Bruce before we move on? Yeah, Tom?
Just a couple of comments to fill in the blanks on some things that may not be obvious. As far as developer of record is concerned, it's not explained in the agreement itself, but as I think everyone knows, Roaring Fork Community Development Corporation owns the property. Low Enterprises has an option to purchase the property. As a result of their option, they control the property. So it would be consistent with the previous redevelopment agreements that the council has approved to enter into an agreement with the party that controls the property.
Which you said
the party that controls the property is the appropriate party to identify as a developer of record. Okay. Second, as stated here, but to be clear, the approval of a pre-development agreement, this one or any other one, does not obligate the council to approve any development plan at all, much less any particular development plan. It sets a framework for moving forward with the developer of record to get to the decision point. But the town is not obligated to grant any approvals by this.
Anybody else? Okay. This is not a public hearing, but we are going to take public comment. I guess the only thing I would ask is that if you could be concise in your statements or your questions, whatever you might have, that would be very helpful because we would like to let anyone who wants to have a say, have a say. And if some people go on for 15 or 20 minutes, it makes it hard for us to get out of here before daylight tomorrow. And also, I have no control over this, but I would request that we maintain civil discourse. We have been doing that, and I would love to see that continue to happen. Everybody's got a vision, and whether your vision agrees with the person next to you's vision doesn't mean they don't have a right to say it or hold that opinion. So from there, I would say my one last thing is the question is on the table whether or not the council should or should not sign a pre-development agreement on this particular issue. So, would someone like to start by saying their name and making their statement or having their question out there on the floor?
Stacy Kraft. I live in downtown Everett. I'm raising 2 kids here. I own a business on Woodland Avenue, and I come to these meetings because I'm worried. And what worries me is that people who don't understand basic economics and basic urban planning principles are being treated as if they know what needs to happen on that piece of land. Basalt must have a downtown hotel. We are a tourist destination, and we have virtually no tourist beds in this town. No developer is going to magically build us a hotel on that property because a hotel has a 10-year plus return on investment unless a developer is allowed to build some market price residential units to recoup that investment. People want affordable housing to be included in this proposal, and it is, in a quantity that befits the size of that project. People have been yelling about the need for more than 70% open space on that parcel, and the town's agreed to that and on board with that. They've sized down that development considerably. People ask why we can't be like Salida and Univista and Carbondale, but they don't understand that these towns have the kind of vibrant mix of river hotels, businesses, residences, and restaurants that is already being proposed. So I hope that you'll take that into consideration. We want vibrancy in this town. We can't pay our bills on the way down if we don't have some vibrancy. And vibrancy comes from a little bit of density and a good mix of residential and vacation bedding. So please move forward with this.
Okay. Once again, we would love to hear your opinion on whether or not the pros and cons of signing this pre-development agreement. We would love to hear that. Yes? Yes, sir.
Excuse me. Yes, my name is Parker Maddox. I live at 350 Riverside Drive. I have studied the papers without participating in this process beyond just attending some of the meetings. I would suggest this to the council. The big problem appears to be a desire, as this woman has expressed, of having an adequate riverside frontage. I agree. Also, we need the vitality of having some construction, a hotel, condominiums, living spaces, retail shops. I think the problem that the council is facing is the size of the development. It comes across as a massive Chinese wall between the town and the river, or whatever park will be in front of the buildings. I would recommend or suggest that the council consider reducing the size and then approving the application as made, so that we have a less of a Chinese. Picture the image from up on the hill, where you look down on this great massive structure that's going to be there. No town would survive long with that, at least in terms of its ambiance. We want something small. We should have something small. We should have something at a human scale, which would be achieved by a reduction in just the mere mass of the buildings as proposed. I would add this additional thing. The Riverwalk area along the river, I forget the name of the buildings, the red brick buildings along the river, is exquisite because of the mature trees, the fact that the river's right there. You really don't notice the buildings behind you. You have a wonderful park area that's a great place to walk, ride a bicycle, take your dog. That's what the council should be striving for, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maddox.
Can I ask a question? Are the cones still down on the property that outline and delineate the size of the developable parcels? I can't tell now, because there's a lot of, yeah, the stakes and stuff, are they still down there?
No.
No, can
We
you
have
put them
two.
back so that people can really see?
Well,
Please?
Well, we're working on constructing
Yeah.
the irrigation and
Okay.
planting, so any possible.
That would be great to help people visualize the scale of that.
Other comments?
Patrice Becker, Basalt. I want to urge the town council and the mayor not to renew the low pre-development plan for the upzone and on the Pan Fork to 75,000 square feet of building. This plan privatizes the Pan and Fork and will conflict with the park activities. Also, the Mid-Valley already has enough traffic, and quality of life here will get worse if you grant the request for the development out at the Willits Town Center for 10,000 plus square feet, which I believe is being done tonight also. Some questions about the Lowe's plan. The hotel they want to build, does it include employee housing for the hotel staff? I haven't seen that in the plan, but maybe I'm mistaken. The development plan also includes 30 condos, when only 6.9% of Basalt residents on our town planning voted for them. The fact shouldn't be ignored. And at what stage are we as far as purchasing the CDC property? Finally, business associates and developers are putting a lot of pressure on all of you, and please take your time with the decision process. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrice. Others? Yes, sir.
Well, I think that the comment that the name for the, I'm sorry, my name is Doug McDonald. The comment about the Lowell Enterprises controlling the property, well, that's part of that contract, I guess, and can be stated that way, but it seems to me that the town ultimately controls all the property through the ability to zone the property the way they wish to do so. That's kind of the trump card that the town has, and I think that the town ought to be able to utilize it to conform to the wishes of the people. Again and again, we polled people and asked what they wanted. There are some key elements here, and what people want and what they object to, there's plenty of intelligent people on both sides of that issue. But I see reasonable compromises possible. Some of the sticking points with the people who object to development are simply, as this gentleman said, the size, the scale of the development that might severely hamper the benefit as a public space, especially the residential portion. Hotel space isn't the same thing as residents who are sitting overlooking a public park that's supposed to be vital. We know what problems Aspen has had with residents, high-end residents especially, overlooking supposedly vital public space. That's a significant problem, I think, and it should be part of any compromise solution that we focus on other types of development in the space rather than residential, and keep the residential reasonably scaled, or the non-residential commercial development reasonably scaled. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. McDonald. And just a quick note here, just so everyone knows, there is not an application on our table from a developer at this point in time. We are midway through a sub-area master planning process, which is just looking at basically the core of downtown. So we do not have an application on the table from a developer. The Town Planning Commission and citizens are working on what this should look like right now, but we do not have any pending application, just so that's clear. Yeah.
I'm Nick Aceto. I live in Willits here in Basalt. I just wanted to basically just ask a question about the pre-development agreement. Is it tied to a specific concept?
No.
No? Can you just go over a couple of really quick basic points, just kind of put it in a nutshell, what it means?
So if you look at Resolution 34, Section 1 sort of outlines an approach that we're going to take, a framework, at looking at the scale of development on a parcel that's identified and Resolution 19. Resolution 19 shows developable parcels, and it shows that big V, the park. And so what we would do is we would work with the developer to understand sort of the matrix that Bruce is talking about. If we have these types of development patterns, what could we expect in terms of reasonable costs for that type of construction represented by low-level development, by mid-level development, by no development, and by high, so that you have two extremes. And then I have what I think is where the Planning Commission, the town and town council are, which is somewhere between the extremes. And then with that, understanding what, as you reduce or change the scale of development and the type of development, the town might have to contribute more money for something that's less dense because it won't produce as much income, or you forgive the cost of the park, or you subtract affordable housing. But you have to know sort of what that scale is so that you can know what those costs and benefits are that you would have to either accept or reject as you look at those levels of development.
So it's basically just a way for the town to understand what the financial implications are.
Right. And the CDC, who owns the property, understanding what their land may or may not be worth.
And cost sharing.
In cost sharing.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Mark Kaczynski. My biggest concern with the whole process is Resolution 34 set the wheels in motion to zone that property for 75,000 square feet. And the pre-development agreement, the developer is anticipating he's going to get 75,000 square feet. He's anticipating there's going to be a building over here on this park area that is now owned by Basalt, a very valuable piece of land. The developer feels that he will get something over on the Marino Center, which is also owned by Basalt. And by extending a development agreement, starting down that road right now there's so much dissonance between the concept of looking at various options in a non-pressured way to say we like this, we don't like that, that this will essentially straitjacket the town. And I just, the art museum went through this in the sense that it had so much zoning on it. So the idea is, you made the resolution to move forward with that zoning, which I think was snuck through. I've been watching carefully, and it was on late Friday night that I became aware of it, and a lot of other people who have been looking at this weren't aware. I didn't get a chance to review it. It was at the end of a 90-page document, and there's, we just need to. We've taken 12 years to get to this stage right now, and I just plead with you to please to allow the process now. Take a couple of months and allow the room of people, the different options, to be aired in a non-pressure-filled way, which a pre-development agreement with those enterprises is going to preclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Others? Yes, sir.
My name is Jim Newsom. Been a resident in Pearson for the 90s, and I think that property is priceless as open space. The Roaring Fork flowing through there is a lot more valuable than any hotel or affordable housing. I think the average person in this town thinks that open space would be amazing. Leaving it as open space would be the best scenario for that property.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Newsom. Sir.
Royal Laybourne, and I'm a business owner and property owner here in Basalt and a long-time Valley resident, and I love the Roaring Fork River so much I named my business after it. So I float on it, and it's an important part of my family's life. And Basalt has two fantastic rivers, the confluence of two beautiful rivers. This is an amazing jewel that has not been recognized until the leadership undertook getting rid of the old home park there. But now that the community at large has, to the credit of the leadership here, invited the community to come and participate in a planning process, and as we walk down that road together, the beauty of it expresses itself more and more. And it takes on a resonance inside the community that is very close to a lot of people's hearts. That being said, there's a cumulative effect that we're faced with here in Mid-Valley. And Basalt, right now, when we're talking, I believe, what we're talking about in many instances is a little bit fragmented, because this is what most people see as Basalt, and they see Willits as a different community, but it is Basalt. And the reality is that the pressure of development in Mid-Valley over the next 15 years is going to change the character of the community. And we can just look around us and be realistic about what that means, and it's cumulative. So it may be happening at Ace Lane's property, it may be happening at Willits, it may be happening at the Crawford's property, it may be happening at Briston Treaterson's proposed development over by the high school. It's going to, right now there's added development at the there's an application with Eagle County across the road from Blue Lake for residential development. And then there's going to be property splits in between every one of those things. And everybody's rushing to get their chunk of the development pie. Well, what that means, and they're building a roundabout. There's going to be a roundabout on Cattle Creek Road in Elgin Bell, which will make it an Avon circus. So, what are we faced with? We've got an incredible property across the street here, as well as the property we're sitting up here right now. It's in the heart of town. It is unique. It will never be replicated. We don't need Lowe's development. We don't need any development. We need to let the development occur that's going to occur. Basalt is going to be a strip from 82 that starts at the Roaring Fork Club and goes to the Dakotas. And eventually it might stretch to Carbondale. But that's going to be just one wall-to-wall high, and every developer is going to come in here and say, oh, because of affordable housing, we need high density. We need approvals. We need variances. We need more development. And every time it's going to mean that our quality of life slips a little bit down the notch and we start becoming part of the front range. So, that being said, we don't need Lowe's, we don't need high-end boutique hotels, and we don't need high-end condos. There's going to be plenty of places for those people to live in Basalt. What we need is a place for the community to come together on the river and celebrate festivals and community in a natural environment. And if that happens, then Old Town Basalt will be as successful as Willits, because Willits has none of that. All it has is asphalt and commercialism. And you can get that anywhere, baby. It ain't special. That is special and cannot be replicated. So I encourage this board to not follow the process that is the development process of, okay, we dot this E, we cross this I, we walk down this road, and we end up at a preconceived destination of development, because that's what we've been driven to understand as progress. It's not, there's no end of itself. The Basalt cannot develop its way into a comfortable future. You have to preserve what makes it special to accomplish that mission. And I would encourage everybody to help the board understand that. Thank you.
A Other comments?
I just gotta say, I hate this forum. I can't stand standing up here and talking. I'd rather type my responses, but Royal, if you want to share emails, I can share some information with you, but everything you spoke about the wall-to-wall highway development is the antithesis of density downtown. When we develop downtown, we're counteracting sprawl.
Okay, guys, no. Nick, could you please, let's let every,
Nick, to us.
Okay.
To us.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
To us.
Let's let everybody who ever wants to talk go once before we don't necessarily let anybody go twice. Okay, I see a hand back there that I can't see who it is.
Hi, my name is Lynn Nichols. I live in Basalt. What happens if we don't pass this resolution? What happens to Lowe?
Mike, would you like to?
That's speculation.
Yeah. I would just be guessing. They would probably continue to work with the CDC, submit an application, and try to guess at what could be approved would be my guess.
So what do we lose if we don't have this resolution?
I think you lose the ability to take sort of that option that Bruce is describing and letting a developer who can assign costs to the construction tell you whether or not, if you build this, this is what it would cost in terms of buying the land. This is what we would pay for the land. We would need the town to give up the park in terms of getting reimbursed for it. And so you sort of start this whole process again.
Plus, if I can, the town would be bearing the entire cost of any analysis you're asking us to do.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, the pre-development agreement, Bruce came up with others, the pre-development agreement contemplates cost sharing between the town and Lowe for the analysis we're doing on options and the public financing implications of these options. So if the town still wanted us to do analysis, it would be on the town's dollar.
But does that force the cost share? It only contemplates the cost share? It doesn't say that it is going to be a definite cost share?
I guess the pre-development agreement it has Lowe's consenting to it.
Right, and in our previous ones where we shared it, example would be Richard Myers, he paid for it. Another example would be CCRC, when we looked at their project and analysis, they paid for that as well.
Could I,
in their pre-development agreement.
to answer that question, it does say that the town and the developer of record agree to share it the cost incurred to have Taylor's produce the study that's contemplated by the agreement.
Mayor, can I say one other thing if I could? I've worked on quite a few redevelopment proposals, and most all of them are preceded by pre-development agreements like this one. We certainly do our own analysis. We don't work for the developer, we work for you. We have our own resources, our own cost estimates, our own factors that we put into the analysis, but it is usually a much better process if there is a pre-developer with no obligations, but a pre-developer that you can actually communicate with about some of these assumptions. We don't know what Lowe is actually going to propose. They know what the Planning and Zoning Commission has endorsed as a concept, but like Mike said, there's no proposal in front of the town right now from the Lowe Corporation. But it's, I think, going to be a much more fruitful and timely process if they are the pre-developer, again with the understanding that this process does not in any way obligate the town or Lowe. And oftentimes I'll see developers that say, hey, we like this idea, but we've crunched the numbers and it doesn't work. Or sometimes my client, the community, will say, we like this idea, but we can't make it work financially either. So this pre-development agreement does not presuppose an actual development agreement. It really just starts that communication process.
What is the cost of the analysis that you're talking about?
You know, we anticipate doing this on an hourly basis per our proposal. I can't say specifically what that cost will be.
Let's say between.
I'm saying to get to something by September 22nd, I would say that the cost would be under $15,000.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see. Back back there first.
Yeah, Mark Harvey. I guess the flip side to Lynn's question is, if you're really not promising Lowe's anything in this contract, why is the contract necessary? And did you just say it's $15,000 for the analysis?
That was my estimate, yes, on a maximum.
So is this, you know, I guess I'd like an honest answer from the town planner and the attorney. Does this set in course an agreement with the Lowe's, even if you're saying it has absolutely no bearing, no hold?
I'm happy to answer the question, but I'm not sure I understand it.
Well, I guess my question is, what I heard this gentleman just say is that the agreement promises nothing to the developer. And so, if that's truly the case, then why does it need to be signed?
It's sets forth the framework for proceeding to address the issues that would be triggered by a development application. There's a lot of moving parts, as we all know, in connection with this property. So the agreement, if you read it, identifies the issues that the town will address, the issues that Lowe would address in anticipation of them submitting an application. If we don't have the development agreement, then both sides will do whatever they're going to do independently. Eventually, I assume someone will submit a development application on this property, because after all, it is private property, and we would just be proceeding with a less structured process leading up to a development.
But you're saying in anticipation of them being the applicant. So aren't you in effect saying that you're anticipating them as the primary applicant, and before we even know what's out there, before we even have a better sense of
well,
all kinds of things? I mean, a number of people have already expressed in this room doubts about the project, opinions about the project. We've seen various schematics that contradict each other pretty radically. And so, you know, again, to me, it's just, what I'm hearing is a contract that isn't a contract, or is a contract that's setting something up, you know, setting up an applicant before we have more information of what's out there, who's out there, and where these design plans mesh.
Okay.
Well, that's your statement. I can't
Yeah.
answer the question
Okay.
any better.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, on the floor, and then over here, and then over there. Here.
Sandy Holmes, and I live in Basalt. And I have a question. It seems like this property came available kind of at the low point in real estate. It seems like such a good investment for the town. Why don't we buy the property, take our time? It's a no-lose. I mean, we can't lose on this. I think if we all wanted to just chip in, we would all go, hey, this is great. This property, I mean, the property has gone up in value from the time that it was talked about, and I think that allows us to not feel the pressure and the feeling like that we have to develop when, you know, really the issue is Willits took away the business section. Just get some transportation between the two and we'll be fine. I mean, truly, I mean, all we need is a little bit of, you know, a little trolley car or an old train or something and we will be fine. But we can as a town buy the property and calm down so that things can be addressed, I think, in a better manner.
I'm thoroughly confused. Having participated in this, you know, what we're going to be when we grow up scenario for the last year, I just think we've got all the suggestions are out there that can possibly come up with suggestions. I don't get this agreement with pre-development approval. I don't quite see, other than cost sharing, which at $15,000 doesn't seem like it's going to break the piggy bank. And when you get done your analysis of what we could possibly get, get back on returns and tax money and stuff like that, I was under the impression we were just going to zone this property of what we could build. Height, setback, size, everything. And then see who comes up with it. Who wants to come in and build something? I never heard of anybody wanting to see condominiums. In all the scenarios that I saw in that little room over there, the Wiley thing, I don't think I ever saw a condo on that property for sale. And all of a sudden, I came back, and here we've got hotel condos, a developer, and I'm going, holy, you know what? Where did this come from? Why don't we just zone the property what we think we can build on it? Zone, everything around here that's yours, if we're going to, move City Hall or something. But we should zone it so people know if they can build on it and see who comes up with a suggestion. And it could be, a lot of it could reflect what he comes up on his financial analysis on September 28th. Do you absolutely need the developer to help you get this done?
Take it.
No, but it would greatly help the both validity and the timeliness of the analysis.
Well, see, everybody perceives, whether it's true or not, that we're in bed with somebody. And that's really, it may not be true and nothing that, but you cannot get rid of the stigma of what's going on. I'd just like to see some fresh faces come in, and he can always come back in and present something to him. To present something to us. But to just keep going on like, as far as everybody's concerned, that's our developer. No matter how many times you spell out and say it's not true, nobody believes it. Sorry.
Thanks, Margot. Okay, yeah.
My name's Greg Sugars. I have a couple of things I want to say that I have not been able to respond to, but also respond to what she just said. I think there's a lot of merit to that. Backing up, that space, as we noticed this spring and early summer, there's quite a bit of this floodplain, some of this riparian. Maybe that's part of the reason why the hotel developers have had some problems coming up with a situation where a hotel works. Just to review, the ski company, the CDC, was the ski company to build a hotel there. The ski company investigated it for quite a period of time. Came back, said we're out, not going to make money. Then Richard Myers came in. He investigated it. We're out, not going to make money. Lowe comes in with the hotel. I have the notes from April 28th meeting where Jim DeFrancia said, the hotel, standing alone, not going to work, not going to make money. That's 3 different times, 3 different, totally different businesses that are not new kids on the block who say, it doesn't work for a hotel there. So why are we still pursuing a hotel there? I wouldn't mind having a hotel there, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So that's when Jim DeFrancia comes back with the condominiums. Of course, the problem with that is 93% of the citizens that participated in our town planning said we don't want condos. So that would seem to me to end the relationship with Lowe. We gave it their best shot. Thanks. We got to move on. But we keep getting in bed with Lowe, and we can't get another girlfriend. It's nothing personal, but this is how we move on. So, having said that, there were a couple other things. Unfortunately, the one person who was less clear about this is not here on the council. I was on the Downtown Area Advisory Committee. There's been some confusion. Lowe never presented a plan to us. We never saw a plan from them. We ended in December of 2014. There was no plan. We never met again. The committee's over. So I don't see any more references in the paper about the Downtown Area Advisory Committee was on board with this plan, or the majority of them were on board with this plan. They reviewed this plan. I'm sorry. That's misinformation. Whether it's intentional or not, I don't know. I'm telling you, never happened. So, what should we do? Maybe we should do something different. She said maybe there are no more new ideas. Maybe there is another idea. Anybody here ever go to the Shermer Meeting Hall at Anderson Ranch in Stone-Ness Village?
Yeah.
Shermer Meeting Hall. What do they do there? Well, they do a number of things, but part of the reason they can do what they do is they have some flexibility. We have a space between RMI and the park, and maybe we could do something that's a public amenity. The Shermer Meeting Hall has these big doors that open up like garage doors. So you can store them to the outside when it's nice, you can close them up in the winter when it's not nice, where the weather's bad. It's a year-round facility. What do they do there? They do art auctions. They just had their big one last week. They do lectures. They do slide presentations. They do music. They do crafts. They even do barbecues. It's not a real expensive structure in the sense that it's got all the bells and whistles, but what it has is the flexibility. It can adjust to the seasons, and it's a public amenity. The key thing is it's a public amenity, and if we had something like that, 100% of our public could participate. Not 50%, not 25%. The town could participate. And if you had to go indoors, you can go indoors. If you don't go indoors and you spill out, it goes right into the park. The beauty of it is you have RMI, a nonprofit. You have something like the Shermer Meeting Hall. Essentially, it'll be a nonprofit for the town. And then you have the park. And this becomes a whole public amenity. And you say, well, gee, we can't afford that. You start having events here, you might be surprised at how we can generate revenue. You can go to any of these small events over at the library right now. We have standing room only. We don't even have enough space. So many people want to go. You want to charge 10 or 15 bucks, 20 bucks? I don't think you're going to have anybody walk away. Listen, we have to believe that we have a choice spot. And if we keep this choice spot available for the masses, which is all the town residents and even other people who visit, that it has great value. It has tremendous value. There's no place in this valley that's comparable to this spot, and it's in the middle of the valley. We didn't have it for 50 years. Now we have a chance. What are we going to do with that chance? Are we going to privatize it so some people can enjoy it, some people can't? Or it'll be 50 years from now and somebody say, I never knew that was there because we blew this opportunity? So maybe we need to rethink and just say, maybe that's not the place for a hotel. Maybe it's a public space, and the public spaces can generate money. And the next time I see in the paper where somebody says, oh, it's just an open space, it's just dirt, it doesn't do anything. How about all the plazas around the world? How about the town parks, town squares, ancient cities, modern cities, major metropolitan cities? They have parks in their downtown. How many can you name? Every big city, Grant Park in Chicago, Central Park, all the plazas in Italy. No, you go here, 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 here. And they're all downtown. If they can afford to have that downtown, why can't we have that downtown? What makes it so that we can't afford it? You know why we can't afford it? Because we don't believe we can afford it. We gotta believe. And we have to believe in ourselves. And stop thinking that we can't get it done unless somebody from the outside fixes it for us. We can get it done. Just clean it up a little bit, and next thing you know, people are there. Things start happening. Why can't we do that? I even have a name for it. The Basalt Social Justice Meeting Hall.
Okay, we got Belle, and then girl with polka dots, then Jay, then Kathleen.
Hi, my name is Belle Carpenter, and I have a small business in Basalt, and I've lived in Basalt for almost 20 years. And I live adjacent to this property and the recycling center, and it's in my backyard, and I look down on it, and the last time I spoke at this meeting, it was kind of the other way around, but I was applauding the council on finally getting some things happening with this area. And I want to say that 2 points. One is just kind of a scope, so you guys know what we're talking about. The Elements Hotel, the 4-story, huge L-shaped building in Willits that is almost completed. That's about a little over 75,000 square feet. It's a huge amount. It's 5 times the size of RMI that we're going to put right down here on our priceless land. And I really just want to say that it is irreplaceable, and so I want to encourage you to take time with this and really think through what a large-scale development like this is going to do for the town.
That was polka dots, then Kathleen, then Jay, the lady in the front. Sorry.
I'm Molly Greenby, and I'm a recent resident. I'm a Colorado kid, but I moved here from Mexico City. And I want to add on to what was just being said, that the most prized locations in a city of 22 million people are the outdoor spaces. And I want to encourage everyone to not be building something and paying attention to whether or not it's a desirable, pleasurable, beautiful place to be where people want to walk around, spend time, and spend their money. I would also argue that vitality is imminent. Nobody is leaving this valley. In fact, tons more people are coming. And like Belle was saying, there's a hotel being built 5 minutes away. 5 minutes away. We could make Basalt something that is the gem in the middle of the valley. The place that doesn't have the hotel. You have to ride the bus or ride your bike. Show up here and it's a respite. It's a safe place, it's a beautiful place, and it needs to be protected. And I grew up in Colorado, loved this, loved these mountains, loved this place, and I came back here because this is the outdoors that I want to be in. And downtown density is a little bit like adding a lane on a highway. You don't decrease traffic, you just increase volume. And maybe that's incorrect. We can talk about the economics of that sort of situation. But the fact is that development is happening so fast around here, I think it's worthwhile to take a breath on what is remaining of our riparian space.
Kathleen, then Jay.
I've got so many things to say, I don't even know where to start. I agree with what's been said earlier about increasing density in town, and I would hope that everyone here this evening that is so opposed to this little bit of a development in town would come out in full force and be heard about the Ace Lane project. I don't see very many people at those meetings, myself included. But anyway, I don't want to be pedantic, but I've got a little history lesson here because one of the things that bothers me the most is the privatization comments and some of the comments that have been made in the newspaper, one of which was overwhelming majority supported limited public and commercial-oriented development to create the most spectacular riverfront park in the state. That is the picture that was painted to entice voters to approve a bond to clear the trailers from the site. A privatized vision never would have gained voter support. This is the map that was behind the vote 2 years ago. We started this project drafted by staff and the town council. Friends of the Fort was created to get this bond issue passed. Yeah. So here's the town portion, here's the CDC portion. Now, this is all going to be part 2. So somewhere in here is really 1 acre is all we're talking about. But at any rate, I don't know how it can be said that this is private. This little piece here is going to privatize the river. I mean, that's my biggest issue with a lot of what's being said. I think it's really correct what everybody's been saying about some of the most glorious places in cities are their parks and squares. They're surrounded by urbanization. So it's, I don't get that. And anyway, basically what I'd like to do, to get this bond issue passed, the voters approved the bond because we were able to show that taxes, property taxes would not be increased because the general obligation bond would be able to be passed or be paid for by sales tax and parks and open space. We may have, what, $4 million left on that debt?
5.
5 remaining? That's a big chunk. To buy this, basically 1 acre could take upwards of another $7 million. That's $11 million for 1.1 acre. I'm like, I would urge the council to go ahead, draft the development agreement, and let's just see what happens. I mean, there is no obligation. Let's just see.
May I let her speak?
What? Anyway, that's it. Okay, blue, front. Oh, Jay, then blue. Sorry.
Oh,
Okay. I'm sorry.
I'm Debbie Wax, and I live in downtown Basalt. And I think the part that gets to me is this lack of hotels. I'm walking by from River Cove over Cottonwood, and I see 3 wonderful cabins that have just been created on the river, and people are staying there, they're fishing there. It's quite wonderful. And then I go by, and the Green Drag has been completely renovated, and if people haven't gone in it, you should go in it because it's been done beautifully, and lots of people are staying there. My neighbors next to me had a big, huge wedding party, and all of their guests stayed there and were happy. They ate in restaurants, they shopped, they went everywhere. And then I go by, and there we've got the Esplanade. Now, it's right there on the river. Fishermen are there constantly. So I'm looking at this little town of 2 blocks, and I'm seeing 1, 2, 3 hotels right in town. And then I drive to Willits, and that monster is there. I do think we have bedding for people. I just question that we need another hotel. That's it.
Thanks, Debbie. Okay, Jay.
So I'm only involved, Jay Gregory. I live in Willits. I'm only involved, I don't want to be an activist, but I'm involved reluctantly, and I am encouraging not to move forward in the direction with Lowe that you are doing, because I've watched like the surveys and the public opinions and been really confused, like some others have expressed. A friend of mine has been cutting out since March every letter to the editor that dealt with the Pan Fork property and stuffing them in an envelope, and that's every day except for when she was on vacation. And I finally pulled them out this morning to count them up. I was just kind of curious because it feels like it's like 60, 70, 80% people want less there. So it's like, why do we continue to move forward with low when it seems to be so overwhelming the other direction? I think many of us are very, very confused about that. And so I counted the letters, and these are arbitrary letters, and you're welcome to look yourself, but I will tell you that there were 32 letters that said less development, and definitely no condos on the riverfront parcel. There were 8 letters that said condos and more development. I couldn't do the math, but my friend here told me that that means that 80% of the people do not want condos on that riverfront. They don't want private residences. They want something there that's going to remain a public amenity. So why again do we want to continue moving forward with Lowe who can't make money unless they do a certain type of a project? Unless you think this is some sort of anomaly, I welcome you all to go on the town's website. They have diligently copied dozens and dozens of letters to the town, to the council, etc. They're on there. I have nothing to do with them. If you go through them yourself and count them, you will assuredly see that the same percentage remains. It's at least 80% that want less development, not more. So I urge the council people, the planner, to start looking at the different direction. And there's many of us that feel this way, and we have crafted something that we'd like to just say in 2 paragraphs. We the people want to ensure that any development on the Pan and Fork parcel enhances it as a recreation and community-oriented public amenity. To assure this one-of-a-kind property glorifies our rivers and our recreation-driven community, we request that any development be limited to 2 stories and less than 30,000 square feet. We would like to specifically assure that any development that occurs will be something that can be utilized by the public. We further ask that any development follow the existing citizen input, which clearly centers on a desire for arts, events, family activities, and river orientation. To foster this, we request the town immediately begin more strongly evaluating various ways to purchase the parcel, and that no multi-housing zoning changes are considered without a public vote, which would mean please don't move forward with a pre-development agreement that doesn't seem like it's the right thing for us. A gold medal river deserves a gold medal riverfront.
Not going to do round 2. If we have people who have not spoken, please do stand and say what you'd like to say.
My name is Rita Brooks, and I have some background in hotel management. I was a revenue director at the Hotel Jerome as well as the Sky Hotel, so I have some understanding of hotel economics. And I think it is not very prudent of us to okay another hotel until we see if the current hotel being built has enough beds in addition to what we have in town. Because what could end up happening is we build that hotel and then one of the 4 hotels is going to fail. And it's not going to be Lowe, it's not going to be Elements, it's going to be one of these local businesses that are going to go under. So I think we really need to take some time and see if we can put the heads in the beds that we're going to have before we start to build more. That is just responsible revenue management.
Thank you.
Glenn, I mean, I'm kind of sitting here and I'm thinking the last time I saw this much kind of amperage was when we were doing the bag thing. You know, so we were doing the plastic bag thing. And it was, you know, I just think, I mean, the only thought I've had about it is, you know, it's really hard, like if I was sitting there, it's really hard to know, is this the majority will? Is this the majority will? It's really difficult. I mean, all I see is there's a lot of passion. Who would not like a park there? You know, I mean, I think that what might make sense is to put it out to a vote. All I know is that the bag thing, after the vote, went away. You know, everybody went, the people spoke, that's the deal. We got the bag thing, we're working it out. And I just think that the potential for this parcel to be, you know, something in the back of half the people in the town are not going to get what they want, or 5149 or whatever, and they're going to be upset. And I think that I can walk away going, you know what, maybe I didn't agree, but that was the vote. I'm good, you know. And maybe that's the only way that we're going to make most of the people feel happy about it.
Thanks, Glenn. I can't hear you.
I asked if you were going to read Rick's comments because he can't be here.
Yes, when we get to ours.
To our comments.
If there's,
I see. Thank you.
Is there any more out there? Not going to do round two, Stacy. Then everybody else gets to go twice. Anybody who hasn't spoken, speak now, forever, zip it.
Tonight.
Right. I don't mean forever. I don't mean forever.
This
Okay.
time, zip it.
So it wasn't a public hearing, but it was very good input. I mean, there was actually some new stuff, which was hugely appreciated by me, and I imagine the folks up here. And at this point, I'm going to go to comments from council, and I'm just going to go ahead and read. Rick Stevens could not be here tonight, and he sent us his comments for the record. They are as follows. I am out of town. Be advised I fully support moving forward with the pre-development agreement with CDC and Lowe. Enough has been documented that reinforces this action, and by approving the agreement, it does not mean the conversation has stopped. Rather, the naysayers will still have a process that allows participation by their people. I firmly believe that after many years of public debate and significant study by past and current councils, that we are completely in alignment with the goals and objectives of our master plans, studies, and community values. To stop the process would be catering to a small group of people who have a single-purpose agenda and who believe that their entitlements include dictating to the rest of our citizens what is best for them. It is time to move forward. Please enter this into the public record as my testimony in my absence. Please read aloud. Thanks, Rick. So now to the live people who are really here. Comments regarding how you feel about all this?
Nobody clapped.
Nobody.
No.
Yes.
Hello.
I heard a lot of people saying that they were confused about this and that they didn't understand. And I'm not surprised after I've heard the comments, because there are people that are talking as if what we're doing tonight is considering an application from a developer for some huge development. And that's not what's happening tonight. That's not even close to what this resolution is. There is no application in the planning office. No one is talking about the kind of density that seems to have people terrified in this room. No one is talking about a Chinese wall along the river. If you look at the map, that has been the consensus of opinion going through P&Z right now. In the first place, everybody seems to forget that the town owns half of this parcel. 27 some acres along the river. That will only be a park. It can't be anything else. We bought it specifically for a park. We financed it with a bond that was only for exactly what some of the people have been talking about, the use of the community. All of the land along the river, from the bridge to Old Pond Park, is going to be a park. Some of you may have noticed that across the river, between the library and the river, there's another park. And they're just finishing what looks to be a very beautiful boardwalk through the wetlands. So on both sides of this, there are going to be gorgeous parks. The plan that P&Z is talking about, even though we're not talking about a plan tonight, but that seems to be what everybody wants to focus on, takes a large portion of the land that the town does not own and suggests to any developer who might come along that it should also be part of the park. So now a large majority of that parcel is exactly what everybody's saying we've got to have. So in that way, aren't we all on the same page? Because some people want a 5.5 acre dog park, which, and we can argue forever if that is going to in any way meet the principles that we started this whole process with. Of course, at first there was the safety for the trailer park and the and taking part of the property out of the floodplain and like that. But also part of this was for something that would draw people to this park to use it. Okay, and the one thing that kind of sets me on edge is when someone stands up and rather than saying, this is my opinion, they say, this is what the whole town wants. Because I can get someone to sit down and talk to you who is 180 degrees different. Okay. Now, let's talk just for a change this evening about this resolution. What this resolution does is it lays a framework to analyze for anybody who would come in and the town what the real costs of doing this. I hear people say, let's just buy it. Let's just buy it doesn't do it. You've got to know what you're talking about, what the expense is. If we're going to form a special district like Crown Mountain and go to the voters for a big tax increase, it's probably going to have the same result as the Crown Mountain one. It's going to fail. On the other hand, a lot of us, Marco, me, and others, have been on boards where developers have tried to guess what might fly and come in with a proposal and spend a ton of money and months and months in the planning process and have it turned down. That is one of the things a pre-development agreement tries to avoid. It allows whoever wants to come in to have an idea what the costs are going to be and what their chance of doing a project there, not just for fun, but actually for a business venture. To be in the end of the expiration date in December of this year of 2015, Alo may have said, we can't do what you want and gone away. Also they may have said, there's no reason for us to go into the planning process with too large a project because we're going to spend all that money and lose. So through this, we tell them the scale that everybody here is talking about. Nobody's talking about a Chinese wall. Nobody wants a Chinese wall. Okay? So that's, now, it seems to have set some people off that in this resolution, it lists Lowe as the owner of record. I'm sorry, the developer of record. Is that right, Tom? I'm sorry. That's because they have an option to buy the parcel. So they get that title. So they get to look at what the town wants and see if they can meet it first. Because other developers, when they have an option to buy the property, can't just barge in front of them. Okay? That doesn't mean that they can come up with something that satisfies what we want. This whole thing with, now we're in the hands of the developer and we're railroading into hell, you know? It's just not true. That's not what this resolution addresses. And in no way does it guarantee that we will do other than what everybody's talking about here. We're all talking about the same thing. Maybe we're arguing about the size of the park. You want 5.5 acres. I'm happy with almost 9. Okay? But that's what this resolution is about. It's setting a framework so that anybody, not just Lowe's, because they may say we can't do it and back off, then anybody can come in, has an idea what might fly in the process, and to spend the big money it takes to go through this process. I mean, Margot's been there with the city, I've been there with the county. I mean, we know how brutal and unfair this can be. So this is for analysis, this is for getting everything above board so that everybody can see what we're talking about, and there's no railroaded hidden agenda. Now, if the real hidden agenda here is that nobody wants any building there, that's fine. But it's going to be your taxes that are going to have to buy that other parcel.
Okay.
And that might be fine with some. So I agree with Rick. I think that the other statement that Jackie just read, that not to pass this is basically to say, you know, we're just going to drag our feet and not do anything, because then everybody may go away. And I don't believe in that. I think we should take a real look at this, because it might just be a great thing for the park and a great thing for the town. But we don't know yet. And so rather than imagining the boogeyman, let's take a look at it. And no one up here is going to vote because we're in bed with Lowe's and now we can't get a girlfriend. That's just not what's going on. That's not what's in this resolution at all.
Are you finished?
That's the best I can do.
Anybody else have any energy left for chat? Rob, you go.
Oh, I surely don't have much to say as Herschel, but I do applaud what you spelled out, what we're talking about, because I think there's a lot of confusion in the room and in the newspaper, in our inboxes and our email about what we're discussing here. I do want to remind everybody that less than 2 years ago, there were 29 trailers on that property, and tonight we're talking about having 3/4 of it open as a park. I think that's a pretty good thing for the town of Basalt, and I'm pretty happy to be part of it. You know, I see this resolution as being fairly benign. It doesn't guarantee anybody anything, but it keeps us moving forward. I think that's important. That's all I got.
You're much more succinct than I am.
Very much. Gary. And we appreciate it.
Well, I feel like we're back to where we were in May, and this was my big problem with May was pre-development agreements. I cannot believe how many calls, how many emails, and how many texts I got today about this. There is so much confusion in the community about what this is. And I really believe that we set a process up, that we would look at all of this and have a big process, and then determine through that process the next step. I believe this is too soon. I do not want to do a development agreement now. We do a development agreement after we go through the process that we laid out over time. I wasn't here for the last resolution, I don't know if I would have voted for the last resolution. And, you know, to me, I look at it going, there is a lot of public passion on this, and it's great. And we got it back, and it's amazing. It's on both sides. We see it in the newspapers. It just shows that this park, this area, means so much to this community. We need to do it right. And the way to do it right is to continue through the planning process and then determine who we're going to work with on development in the future. And I think what Glenn said is where we're going. Is going to be a public vote on where we go with this. And I think that's great, that we are a democracy, and let's vote on it, and let's see what the people want. So it's not just the 40 people in the room here, it's the entire town. And so, you know, to me, I am not in a rush to just make something happen. I believe vitality, and this is what I said when I was running for town council, is vitality is open space, trails, parks, good schools, great community, places for people to gather in communities. I love the presentation I got, the more open areas for people to come. I just took a 2-week tour around Colorado and the communities I hung out in, had great spaces and great things for people to do in that place. And then I came back home and I love Basalt. I moved here in 2002 and I got a job in Aspen. I did not want to live in Aspen. And I looked at Carbondale, and everyone said it's so cool, and you love it. And then, you know what? I looked at Basalt, and I was like, this is where I want to live. And I've lived here, and now I've been on town council twice. And I want to make sure we do the right thing here. And the right thing for me is to take the planning time to look at what we got, figure out how many stories, what do we really want to see there. And, you know, one of the things I'm kind of bummed about is that we don't have grass growing out there yet. We kind of were supposed to have grass growing. I know it's been a rough year, not blaming anyone for it. It's just a bummer because I think when people, now that people have seen it, let's do a little bit of master planning, and then I truly believe we're going to a vote. And I'm happy to hear what the citizens say, and what they say, you know, then it forces the hand, and that's what democracy is about. And so, for me, I am not going to support this pre-development agreement. I don't think it's the end of the world not to support it. And, you know, I don't really have a problem with the town. I do support us looking at some financials of all of this stuff, and I'd like to see that. But other than that, you know, that's where I'm at.
Bernie?
Well, you know, the easy thing would be us to decide this by an applausometer. And I mean that not totally facetiously, because tonight we have a room filled with people who are overwhelmingly, say 85, 90%, opposed apparently to going ahead with this initial engagement with the developer with no assurance that it will not end up with a force toward overdevelopment on the park. Now, people have been very civil, I appreciate that, but they haven't been that civil in the letters and in the newspapers. And it seems to be getting to be where it's really kind of an ugly division, that if you don't believe what I believe, there's something wrong with you, and you're not for Basalt, and vice versa. If you don't believe in development, you're dictating and preventing the economic growth of Basalt. My commitment is to listen to all parties. I see a split. Earlier time, we had this room filled with people, not just business owners, but very sincere, concerned citizens who wanted to go ahead with the maximum possible development on this land. And it was pretty overwhelming. Both sides seem to be saying, and I've read it over and over, clearly this is what the public wants. Clearly the majority of us want this and not that. It's not at all clear to me what the majority. I think we are split very evenly based on the turnout, big turnout of both those for and against. These are the citizen activists who will vote, who care enough to get involved, And I appreciate the time that both of you, both people with different conflicting views, take to show up here and express your feelings. I would have to say the idea that we bought a park was overselling and overstating. We did not buy a park. We bought a floodplain subject to river overflow that must meet the dictates of the Corps of Engineers' reclamation of a riverfront. And I think anybody who tells you that it's a park full-time, you only had to use your eyes and see the waves of water, because that is built in a floodplain. Okay? We probably paid way too much for that, but we did. We can't change that. It is not a public access park. It is a very nice open space designed to reclaim that river with natural species of plants and trees. So we came to a conclusion, we came to kind of a compromise, seems another number of sessions back, that we would buy half of the developable property and give the developer half. We didn't say where we were getting the money or how we would do it, and I agreed with that. But the higher the level of controversy and the louder it gets, I begin beginning to think a lot along the lines of Glenn Rappaport. That why should this council go through the brain damage of putting it through a complete process? Why should the developer go through the brain damage and the expense of going through a complete process until we as a community decide as a group where we're headed? Maybe that means a referendum. That's not my first choice, but Glenn made a wonderful point that the last time we had this much hot air in this room, for and against, was on that plastic bag issue. And it became so contentious that we held a referendum, the whole thing evaporated. And everybody went their way, no hard feelings, down the road. I do notice something, that the owner of the land seems to owe us $2.7 million for investments we put in. Is that a correct figure? One idea would be traded his indebtedness, and this is the Community Development Corporation nonprofit that promised us this development, promised us the relocation of the citizens who are living in the trailers, and failed to deliver on every promise for the last 3 years. I'm not going to overlook that, and we're going to get in bed with these people again, not without an awful lot of analysis and thought on my part. So I think all in all, I'm one of those who does want to see development, and I think the one good argument I've heard is no, nobody wants to see overdevelopment on that. But please, let's do something to show them Basalt is moving forward with something. I think that we've argued it back and forth about a hotel. A hotel is not a promise, it's not a guarantee. It was a possibility that Jim DeFrancia held out to the community with the warning that he could not get financing to build the hotel that he would like to build because the financial backers were not comfortable with the project. Mike has warned us that there is very little space to build enough parking to accommodate that hotel with cars coming and going in our downtown. It surely is not going to be on the riverfront covered by 2 feet of water, as we just saw. We do own some land where the dumpsters used to be. That would be very appropriate for a multi-story garage. I think I could get comfortable with some level of condominiums to show that we're doing something. It's not completely undeveloped. It doesn't bother me too much that they would be expensive condominiums. They're expensive because they're on the river and the developer has to make a profit. I can see all sides in that. I guess after thinking I was going to vote in favor of this, after hearing the amount of division and after hearing Glenn Rappaport's suggestion, I'm going to say I cannot support jumping in bed. Excuse that expression. I cannot support engaging in a pre-development document where there is already, by pictures and maps and so on, of some expectation of very large development up to 75,000 feet. So bottom line, I think we should bring it back to the community. I think we should pay for it 100% because that makes it our document, not somebody else's, and we should give serious consideration to at least some level of development to revitalize the economic vitality of this town. And I'm asking for empathy on your part. You see a park is great and play, but we can't use it all year. Summer is our busy time already. The businesses downtown are not failing, but it is stagnant. You leave that downtown stagnant long enough, it'll begin to fail. We do need to do some level of appropriate development. I don't think I'm ready to get into this agreement right now.
Hi, Mark.
Hi. Well, I thought last meeting we were making good headway, but it seems like we've slipped back into the mud a little bit here. And I'm seeing so many similarities between this and Base Village and Stonehouse. The community was divided pretty much right in half. C&Z went through brain damage, council, I mean, it went on and on and on. And it finally went to a referendum. And it started getting built, the recession hit, well, we're back kind of where we were before. But my opinion has always been we need a little bit of development over there. My first suggestion was a small fishing lodge, and I was always under the impression of about 30,000 square feet. I think at this point one of the few times I gotta agree with Glenn, but I think it's gonna go to a vote, because I'm sure tired of the brain damage. I mean, I get highs and lows, you know. I'm feeling good last meeting, and now I'm feeling not so good again. And I just think let you people decide in a vote and let the chips fall where they may. I'm going to vote for the agreement just because they're going to share the $15,000 cost. That's the only reason. We're not tied to anything in the agreement. The $15,000 is just another little pile to put on the big pile we already got. So I'm thinking if the CDC can share the expense with no risk on our part, let's go that direction.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of you as well. There's one thing I want to say before I talk about the pre-development agreement, and that is, if you really listen between the lines, we want vitality, right? We want vitality. We want people roaming around downtown for whatever reason, because they live here, because they're visiting here, lots of different reasons, but I think we're kind of matching on the definition of vitality. So I've been doing a little of my own homework about different resort and small towns that their downtown economies tend to run on special events. Our old friend Bill Efting, who used to be here and is a very economic-minded guy. In Frisco, they've had 50 or 60 special events in their town since the beginning of the year. And he's working on coming up with numbers for me on what that means. It doesn't mean, this is unrelated really to the park, except for you need a place to have a special event, and we don't have that. If we have a special event in this valley, it's at Crown Mountain. It has to be at Crown Mountain. So, having said that, I think that vitality is vitality. It is people swarming and spending money and eating and having fun in their community. So, having said that, okay, on the pre-development agreement, I also believe that this is premature. I feel a sense of not being genuine about the fact that we are in the middle of a master planning process, and I feel like we need to finish that. And along with that, I think we need to do these financials. I think we could narrow the financial work that we're asking Bruce to do, because I don't think any of us want to even look at more than 75,000 feet, and I don't think most of us want to look at no development at all. I don't. I'm very comfortable with that 30,000 sort of look, but I feel like we should finish this process before we start having developers who we are specifically naming. That bothers me, even though there is, our attorney will tell you, any attorney will tell you, there's every loophole out of this. It is heading us down a road. It is sending the public a message. And it's not worth it to me when we haven't finished our planning process. So, I guess that's where I'm on it, which is kind of where I've been all along. I think there were a couple of new ideas. People can't hardly help but notice that somebody finally said vote in the public meeting, which is great, because we all talk about it. We either talk about voting to buy the parcel or voting on a decision. So it's, I would like to see if we can go further, because people aren't screaming at each other anymore. And I would just like to see if we can go further in the planning process without a pre-development agreement and see what Bruce's numbers look like with regard to these deals. I would love to see whether Bruce, it's probably not Bruce, but somebody else, look at the financial implications of special events, community events, and what does that produce. I don't think to leave that out, I don't think you can leave that out of the economics. So anyway, that's all I have. Does anybody have anything else, or is there a motion?
Speak to that about the pros and cons of not.
Actually, no. No. Done.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I knew that was going to happen. Okay, thank you. We are done with that.
I think you ought to explain what happened.
We had a tie vote, which means it didn't pass. And we need a break.
We'll see how many people stay for.
What's that?
All right.
Doggies.
We are back in session, everybody, and we had our break. It was really fun. Our next item is Resolution 44, Resolution of the Town approving a pre-development. Deja vu. Pre-development agreement with Willits Town Center. Susan.
Yes. Yes. Again, this is a resolution approving a pre-development agreement with Willits Town Center. And the discussion on this item started at our May 12th work session meeting. Remember that we met over at Willits Town Center. We got a brief update from the Willits team, including Evan Welsh, where he explained that they would be coming back with some PUD amendments to increase the square footage that would be permitted in the PUD and to discuss a PIF with the town. And then on July 14th, we had packet material for the council, and we had a work session where we explained the two different tracks that we were under with the Willits Town Center project. And one was the PUD affordable housing tract. This includes the amendments to add increased square footage, includes some amendments to the signing regulations, and addresses some affordable housing mitigation requirements. And then the second track is this financial retail track for financial assistance with the town. And we're going to start out tonight's discussion really with a brief presentation with Bruce Kimmel,
because this is something that the town of Basalt has never done before. So we want to give a status report on this and give the council an opportunity to say any concerns or questions they have on this. And then we'll touch base on the PUD amendment. We have the Willits Town Center Development team here to answer any questions. They're not going to make a presentation.
Thank you.
And then we'll talk just a little bit about the schedule. So, Bruce?
Thanks, Susan.
He's gone.
He's gone.
Thank you, Mayor and council members.
Thank you.
I'm going to wait until everyone has my handout.
Do you think it's hot in here, Bruce?
It's a little warm, but it's good. It's cooling down.
He's used to humidity.
I am,
Well,
yes, exactly.
It helps to get like 900 bodies out, right?
Yes, exactly.
Fans too.
Thanks for having me. As Susan mentioned, I wanted to come back. I was last here on July 14th, as was my colleague Paul Weiser, and wanted to give you an update on where we're at with our analysis of the PIF request from the development team at Willits. Give you an update on the framework that we're thinking we're heading toward in terms of a proposal to bring to the town council on this element of the PUD amendment. And again, it's really just the PIF part. It's not about the overall square footages or the affordable housing requirements that are part of that, integrated into that question. But because, again, this is a new concept for the town of Basalt, and because of the importance of this part to the development team as well in terms of being able to talk to potential tenants, and also due to the competitive nature that Willits is finding itself in due to some proposed development surrounding it, we wanted to come to you again, get your feedback, get your comments and questions, so that when we do come back in September with a proposal, we've got those questions and comments incorporated. I should note, I was typing this fast. It says Willits Town Center Eller summary. This is really Eller's summary of the deal points, but it's about the Willits Town Center proposed credit PIF and add-on PIF. So, as you know, the developers at Willits have identified a gap between the costs that they expect to incur to develop the retail areas along Market Street and the costs that they think they can reasonably expect to recoup via competitive tenant rents, that is, rents that will actually attract tenants. We agree, based on our preliminary analysis, that there is a gap between the cost of development there and what will attract the types of tenants that they're seeking to attract and that will make sense in that development. We're still working on some of the details, so we haven't come to a specific dollar amount for the gap, but we think that there is a credible gap, and so we're working towards what could be a combination of PIF tools that could be palatable to the town. Obviously, it's your call as the council, but it's something that is sort of the first question. Is there a gap? And we do think there's a gap. We're just still working on some details to get to a specific number. As we discussed last month, one way to bridge that gap, in other words, to get the net development costs down to a level that is coverable by those competitive tenant rents, is through this type of PIF agreement, either a credit PIF and or an add-on PIF. And if you don't recall, the credit PIF is capturing a portion of the incremental new sales tax over the existing base. You know, the town still collects all of the sales tax based on the existing sales, and then you would share a portion of the incremental new sales tax at Willits for some period of time.
Question.
Yes.
I just want to be clear on that. So everything that's built now and is generating town sales tax would be covered, that we would be giving up 1.5% above 43 million.
Correct.
That's expected to be generated in, okay. Is that the total expected generation for 215? 43 million, or is that an arbitrary?
No, that is our educated estimate based on past years and how 2015 is tracking.
So this assumes that there is some...
Hello, Bernie. Phone.
All right. This assumes then that there is some growth, 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever, and they are getting a 1.5% credit on that amount of growth?
Correct.
Okay, so...
And I should also point out, as my colleague Paul Wood mentioned, that the credit PIF technically isn't a sales tax rate. It's a fee in lieu of that portion of the sales tax that the town would otherwise collect. And the add-on PIF, a supplemental rate, is also a fee per Colorado state law. Just for the record, it's an important
So
concept.
just to repeat, so I get it through my head, we still get the full sales tax generation of up to 43 million, the expected in 215, and then they get 1.5% of a few million above that.
Well, it would be splitting 50-50 incremental new sales. What does that mean? It means sales from Market Street, but it also means for the credit PIF period of time, it's incremental or inflationary sales volume on other parts of Willits. If I can go to the chart, because I'm kind of a
let's go to the
graphical
chart, because
person.
I'm still not clear on this.
It's not an easy concept, Bernie,
Right.
and this is part of the reason we're here tonight to keep moving the dialogue along.
Right.
So these numbers are going to change based on whatever type of PIF agreement is actually negotiated. But Bernie, what you were referring to is what we're calling the baseline taxes, and that's the dark green. So this example estimates actually that you meet the PIF obligation, and this may or may not be what is reflected in the final agreement, but it estimates that you do this sharing for about 13 or 14 years. And you can see that during that period, you collect about 1.3 million of taxes. That's your 3% on the 43 million that is being generated at Willits today. 43 million of taxable sales, okay?
Mm-hmm.
At 3%, that's 1.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that's that dark green rectangle
Mm-hmm.
that goes out to 2028, and
Mm-hmm.
just in this scenario that I printed off for you.
Mm-hmm.
The light green is the town's share, the 1.5% essentially, or 50-50 split on incremental new sales. That would be based on new retail on Market Street, as well as other inflationary growth in uses that are already at Willits for that credit PIF period. And so that's the light green that the town would receive. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now you can see what happens once that light green, or let me keep going then with the colors. The blue, the dark blue,
Mm-hmm.
is what would be, if approved, the Willits Town Center 50% share of that incremental growth. And then the light blue would be the add-on PIF, which would be that supplemental rate fee that would be on new tenants, primarily along Market Street.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the sharing, if you will, the authorization would be the dark blue and the light blue. And then you can see when those go away, then the light blue goes away because that add-on PIF ceases to exist. And the trend line that was defined by the top of the dark blue bar becomes the town's baseline at that point, and it all becomes regular 3% sales tax volume.
So in 216, we're giving up the dark blue plus the light blue in sales tax revenue? Is that what you're saying?
I guess I would clarify that you're investing the dark blue. The light blue is something that you'd be authorizing the town center to impose on itself.
Okay, so this is the PIF, the light blue, right?
Yes.
Well,
the
they're
add-on
both-
PIF.
And then you credit them the 1.5, which is the blue, darker blue.
Correct. That's right.
That's the offset of sales tax.
Correct.
Is there any way to explain this in like, you have a dollar bill, you have 100 pennies, something like that says, because honestly.
Well, it's about sharing incremental new sales above what's being generated currently. And so if you what is going on here is, let's say if you're generating $43 of existing sales, you get all the sales tax on that. And if you generate another $10 of new sales, you're splitting that $5 and $5.
And then that doesn't include the add-on.
That does not include the add-on.
And that is how many more?
Let's say another $1.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that makes more sense to me than the dark
Yeah.
blue line versus
Right.
the light blue line.
I would like to see this graph redone with these colors identified.
To the right.
It is.
Oh,
There's
there
a-
they are.
yeah.
So I'm not s-
There.
Okay, but what, it would be helpful to know, what are we giving up in tax dollars to the project in terms of what projected sales tax dollars are we giving up in
Sure.
year 1 through 13?
And all, yeah, absolutely. And all of that will be part of the recommendation that you would have well in advance of the September 22nd meeting.
Okay.
What we're
So
trying to
we're
do.
not there yet. We're at a conceptual
Exactly,
level.
because really we still have to define that gap that we as your advisors think is
Mhm.
reasonable for you to consider filling,
Right.
and how best to do that. But what we're trying to do is refresh your idea of what the credit PIF is about, how that works, and how the add-on PIF works, because they are new concepts, and we don't want to be coming to you raw in September and have you react to it at that time. I should point out on that bullet point about the credit PIF, it's very important that there be maximums, and the maximums really would be until the first of either of these would come first, which is a maximum present value amount or a maximum term that you would decide in the development agreement and PUD amendment. So basically, for the developer to have some value, you might be saying, well, so these are all future tax dollars or PIF dollars. How does this actually provide value for the developer here in 2015, right, to make some investment decisions?
Mhm.
Well, that's where we use the idea of present value, which translates a future revenue stream into today's dollars, because that makes it easier, I think, for you as the council to quantify what you're being asked to give up or authorize in the case of the add-on PIF, but it also translates to a gap filler for the developer, so they can say, okay, here's our total cost, here's our net cost with this contribution or assistance from the town, and here's the net result. And they can use that net result in making their investment decisions and saying, can we afford to make this investment with the type of rents that we think we can get? So it's that PV, and at the same time, you don't want to let that go out forever, the ability to collect the TIF. You want to provide some urgency for them to do the development, to maximize that value to themselves and to the town. So that's why you want a time limit on there, right? So if you reach 15 years or whatever the number ends up being, and they haven't reached that target, then the PIF agreement goes away at that point.
Okay.
So it's a two-part test that we would be recommending.
Bernie, are you finished with questions for Bruce? Okay, Herschel, then Tom.
My assumption looking at the graphs is that the rising amount of taxes is influenced by the new retail shops that they want to build.
Absolutely.
And so you see that in the near future, it jumps up from where it is now to 1.75 or whatever it is. It's hard to tell exactly on this graph. And that is new tax revenue that is generated because they can afford to build these new retail spaces.
That's the idea, yes.
Yes. So we're actually splitting new revenues that we wouldn't otherwise have anyway. It isn't like we're giving up something we're making already. And that's how I read the graph. Is that way off?
That's the core question, Herschel. That's what we call the but-for test. And so that's part of the reason you've hired us to quantify that and to say, does this seem to make sense? If we think the gap is less than what the developer has said, we will say that and give you options for filling that gap. But at the core, you, the council, have to decide, yeah, we believe that this development would not go forward as proposed without some level of assistance, or you
so
don't.
if the assumptions in the graph are right, the town would be making more in tax revenues than if they couldn't build this extra space.
Right.
Just not as much as if everything was normal.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, Tom.
Couple questions. One, that assumes that in the alternative, then what would happen with that land?
What
What is
assumes?
Willits going to do if the town doesn't give them
A PIF.
Right.
we don't know.
No. So that's again part of the but for.
Can we assume that they're not going to leave it sitting idle? And does that factor into the but for test? We
don't evaluate what could hypothetically get built there. I think what you could assume is there, Willits is, what's there at Willits is performing. Generally, there are vacant spaces, but there is volume there, there is growth there. I think, Tom, what you could assume conservatively is that there would be some incremental growth off of this corner of the dark green rectangle, right? And there would be a much shallower slope line forward in terms of the town taxes.
Isn't it reasonable to assume at some point they develop, maybe not as fast, so that the tax revenue to the town would be deferred and spread out?
It's possible. I think what's also very interesting right now is are the competing proposals in not one but two adjacent areas, and the fact that there aren't commercial limitations on those proposals in unincorporated areas. So it's if you could look at this in a vacuum, it would be easier, but I think that's a serious complicating factor.
Now, on with respect to the credit PIF, that doesn't involve any increase in sales tax, percentage of sales tax, right?
Right, it just assumes the 3%.
Pardon?
It assumes the 3% existing sales tax.
Existing sales tax. So there's no table issue.
No.
Is there a table issue with the 1% add-on?
No, because it's not a tax. It's an add-on fee.
The fee.
Correct, right?
Yes.
And it's a fee, why?
So the town is not actually levying a tax. It's just the credit obviously is the tax that already exists, so you don't have a problem there. And then the add-on PIF is a fee that is imposed by the developer. So the town really has no involvement whatsoever, therefore to doesn't apply in that situation either.
And I have one more quickie too. What are the implications to the user, the retail buyer?
Mm-hmm.
Are there?
If
do they have a higher tax? Do they look like they have a higher tax on purchases?
If the town authorizes an add-on PIF, and if Willits opts to impose it on themselves and their future tenants, then if you shop in one of the stores where the tenant has that add-on PIF, and not all of them will, right, because some are already there and they didn't agree to that, then under this proposal, as proposed by Willits, you would be paying a half cent to a cent higher depending on the store and if it's a new tenant that has consented to this versus an existing tenant. But the credit PIF, there's no change to the consumer.
It's just the add-on.
It's just the add-on.
Got it. Here.
So going back to Tom's thing, you said that the developer could put the fee on.
The add-on fee.
We have to approve that fee?
Correct.
Okay. Because
authorize it, if you will.
Authorize, but isn't it authorizing an additional tax?
It's not a tax.
No, it's
because
it's a self-imposed tax.
There are technical
it just
considerations.
And that's where, Gary, that's where I would still say the but-for analysis, and I talked about this in July. Okay. Whether it's credit PIF or add-on PIF, it's my belief that you need to be comfortable that there's actually a legitimate cause for this level of assistance, right? Because there is an impact. I think our analysis is saying we think there's a gap. We think that these tools make sense. We haven't gotten to the right proportions or right maximums to recommend to you yet. But that's ultimately the exact policy question is, does this make sense? And do you think that this level of development would happen without this type of assistance, especially given the competitive pressures in the surrounding area? I think that's kind of one of the core questions you'll be revisiting. If I can just ask, hit a few other points. I know you have other things on your agenda too. Really important, if I can just go back to the credit PIF to point out that the Element Hotel will be generating both sales tax and lodging tax. Mm-hmm. The sales tax from the rooms at the Element Hotel are not contemplated to be part of this credit PIF. and aren't, or the credit PIF, the sharing, and aren't reflected in this graph. So really, I probably need to add another bar on what you're collecting from Willits once the element comes online. So that's something that I wanted you to know as background context, that you will be getting additional sales tax from the element once that comes online, and of course you'll be getting a portion of the lodging tax as well from those rooms. Okay. I've talked about the add-on PIF and how that works. Again, we would recommend limiting that to either a present value maximum or a duration, whichever comes first, like with the credit PIF. And at this point, based on what we've seen, we think that the 50-50 share on the credit PIF and allowing for a half cent to a cent add-on PIF are the right tools. What we're really still working on are recommended maximums for you, the council. The reason why we think these tools make sense is we think they'll be adequate to fill the gap. We've done our own revenue analysis of where that gap range is likely to be and how much these tools would generate. We think that they, in tandem, work more rapidly than other approaches to filling that gap. So if you do believe there's a gap and want to help fill it, it's not going to take forever and ever. In tandem, they actually work pretty well to get that gap filled so that they can go away. And we think also based on the town's finances and also for Willits, it seems like it's a reasonable splitting of the load between using incremental new sales tax versus this add-on. But that's ultimately, again, a policy decision. So I just wanted to let you know that we think that that recommended combination seems to be going in the right direction. Okay, then the bottom half of the page, and this is where we diverge a little bit and where you'll see some differentiation between the tools in our final recommendations. The credit PIF generates more taxes than the add-on, right? It's on a bigger base, it's more as a percentage, and so it's going to generate more revenue. But it's also of more value to the town, right? Because it's part of your existing 3%, and even though it's just on new sales, it's still something that you're investing that would otherwise be going to the town, assuming that that development would occur. So for this reason, because credit PIF is worth more, we think it makes sense to strike a balance where you have a somewhat more, I guess, stringent limit. Stringent may not be the right word, but a limit that tries to have the credit PIF burn off faster than the add-on PIF. In other words, that gets you the 1.5 cents back faster and gives the developer more latitude, a longer period of time to collect a half cent to a cent on applicable tenants. That's add-on isn't something that you'd be getting anyways, and so we think that's an appropriate way to have more value and limit your participation term in that regard. Last couple of points. I think it's really important to point out that we've sliced and diced these numbers a number of ways already. Bernie, to your point, we'll be getting you lots of numbers. But if you look at that 20-year term, and this actually graph goes up 25 years, but if you look at the term through 2035, in all the different scenarios we're running so far, the town collects 70 to 75% of all of the Willits taxes under any of those scenarios, and the PIFs collect 25 to 30% of the taxes, including any add-on. So under any of these combinations, you're still, because you're getting those baseline taxes plus some, you're getting roughly 2/3 to 3/4 in any combination over that 20-year period. So we'll have more on that, but I felt that that was an important ratio to get out there at this point. And you'll be getting more if you include the sales tax from the hotel, which wouldn't be part of the PIF agreement. Finally, as we stated, once the credit PIF expires, you'll get the full 3% on all taxable sales. And once the add-on PIF expires, that effective rate would drop for the tenants that are affected. I think this is a model, if you see fit. I know there's been some discussion. Bernie, I think you raised the question at the last meeting where we talked about this, about how would this be viewed by downtown business owners versus the Willits. I think this is something that would be a model that could be available for downtown as well. It's not something that's exclusive to Willits. If there's improvements that are proposed for downtown.
So you think there is a possible applicability here that for downtown? I'd be interested in looking at that.
And like you recall with the hotel agreement with the sharing of the incremental new 2% lodging tax, you made it very clear as a council that that was applicable to Element, but also to other hotels as well.
Right. Yeah, well, that certainly, I think, would help. I'm certainly very open to that. I think that's something we should explore.
And Mayor and Council, the last thing I would point out is that we're going to shoot to have something wrapped up for your consideration at your September 22nd meeting. In before that, so you have a chance to review it and ask questions. After talking a lot with Susan and the applicants about the overall PUD amendment, it's likely that you'd be having the readings on that ordinance in October. But we want to get a proposal in front of you for approval via or consideration via resolution in September, so that if you do approve of it, the tenant knows that they can start working towards that in attracting tenants. It also helps to reduce the number of issues you're dealing with at one time in terms of the PUD amendment. But know that the PIF, if you do approve a PIF in September, would still be contingent on the overall PUD proposal. It would just really be plucking off this one issue saying, yeah, we're comfortable with X proposal here, but know that everything still has to be tied in with the PUD amendment.
I guess I'm just thinking of it in the reverse. Shouldn't, for the benefit of the developer, shouldn't we tackle the PIF first so he knows what he's looking at? Does he really
That's actually, I'm sorry, that's
through the, I'm open-minded on looking at that, but I would think that's a hurdle question for the developer.
Well, I think we are proposing to do the PIF first, but I see what you're saying. I guess it could influence how they're viewing the rest of the PUD as well.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
Yeah, Rob.
Quickly, Bruce, you expired these in 2028. Is that arbitrary, or is that somewhere?
Rob, it made certain assumptions about inflation in the sales tax base, and this actually contemplates a 1% add-on PIF. So what I was trying to do, just for purposes of some initial modeling, was this is based off of about a $9 million gap number, and it's just what this combination of assumptions allowed for. This may not be what we're coming back with in September. But the goal would be some combination that lets you defease that credit PIF sooner than later.
It's based on the gap, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I know that was a lot, but I would really like any other feedback you have or comments, questions. I got some great comments at the last meeting, but again, as we go towards September 22nd, I don't want any unpleasant surprises for you all in terms of what we're looking at.
I think we're going in the right direction to get the information we need to make a decision. I'm certainly open to all the possibilities. I would suggest that we get it in plenty of time before any public meeting so that either you, Mike, or Paul has all your visuals stacked up and has time to tutor us adequately so that,
Great. Mayor, other council members? Gary?
Well, I mean, to me, this is we're talking about the PIF, and, I'm sorry I wasn't here on the 14th, but this overall thing is going to be, I need a lot more information. I'm going to need a lot more information from the developer on why, like, the scenarios, like, not just the credit, the gaps. I need why. It's like, I know there's some potential development that we're trying to get Eagle County to not approve, but it's really hard to all of a sudden then approve more at Willits, but we don't want any over there. So, I mean, it's going to be a really difficult, decision to make, and, over time, I think we're going to see, we had the pan and fork tonight, and so you saw all those people. I don't think this is getting the notice of what that is for the town, but I'm just going to need more information from the developer on what this really means for the community. If you don't get it, you don't get the extra 91,000, you don't get the PIF. Really, what are the options? Because I know there's not a no option, and I'm hoping there's not a no option because there was a development approval that you have, and it just might mean longer. But I'm going to need all that information. I mean, I'm not ready to get into a development agreement because I don't understand it enough. The PIFs, I understand the PIFs. I've seen them in a lot of other places. Obviously, Costco in Gypsum, and I think the Meadows.
Meadows.
Yeah, the Lowe's Meadows have done those things. I'm not necessarily against it. I think I can definitely be, a partner in some of that. But to give a credit on potential new sales tax means that the town's not using that extra new sales tax. What is that number? You say it's hidden in this sort of world. What is this dark blue that we don't get? I need more information on that because it's significant. It's money that we could use for other things, and it's if we do it here, we better be ready to do it down here, and if we better be ready to do it, that's an enticement over there. But that's going to be a serious hit to town. What is that hit on our parks, open space, and trails tax?
Sure.
What is that and all that?
And absolutely, I will for sure provide you with all that information from the town perspective. I know a lot of the information that the developer team provided last month will give you some context from their perspective as well. The one thing I would just reiterate, and I think you've got this, but you said we're giving up that blue. That assumes that all of that Market Street development would happen and be leased up without this assistance. So that's a really key thing. If you believe that there's not this need for the assistance and that the developer could fill up all that Market Street space, build it and fill it up, then you'd say, yes, that's a hit to the town. Otherwise, it's not a hit to the town because it wouldn't be generated.
Well, the thing is, to me, that's why I want more information from the developer, because you're basically just making it spread out longer. Because I'm hoping one day it would be developed. So if it's under no add-on money from the town helping out, it will get developed. It might just take till 2030. And then we would start seeing the money. It would just take longer. This way gets it all developed, but the town doesn't see it till 2028. So that's the hit that I'm looking at for the town.
And I think maybe, and that sort of gets to some of Tom's question as well. And I think we could run some scenarios as well as get the developers' feedback on that. Yeah, that's helpful.
Right. Well, it's just something I watched the presentation that they made on the 14th. That's why I really think. The fact that we're doing it through grassroots, because I was laying on the floor and very happy. It put me right to sleep. It's great muscle relaxation.
That's our goal, Gary.
Yeah, you do a great job of that. But honestly, I watched it and I understand. I kind of understand that there's a certain level of development and a certain number of square feet that they propose that will attract people for this and then hopefully fill up. But that's the other information I need is under current development scenarios, we are a town of slower growth, and it's already taken 15 years to get this. So do we want to speed that up, or what's the time frame for what would it be if we didn't do this credit and stuff like that? And then what's also the time frame if we don't get the extra 91,000 square feet?
And Mayor, if I can just say, one of the caveats I'm just going to say right now is that alternative scenario is going to just have to make some assumptions about what's going on in competing areas or not going on in competing areas. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was. Oh, yes, sir.
Just to reiterate that we're going to need to see the same projections for Old Town. The scenarios of a PIF, a TIF, how much money the town's giving up, what's going to be the tax rates here.
You talking about downtown?
Yes.
But there's no proposal for that.
If there was more commercial development downtown.
Right. I'm just saying that could happen downtown.
If there was more commercial development.
So wouldn't that be imposed in the existing?
No. Yep. I'm glad you clarified that. That's all I have for you, Mayor. I know that was a lot, but thank you for your indulgence.
Great.
So I was just gonna mention
Yeah.
about the other track is the PUD track, which
Okay.
includes the 91,000, and about 2/3 of that is additional commercial square footage, and about 1/3 is residential. And the other piece is kind of this affordable housing piece. They'll have to provide new affordable housing commensurate with that additional development. But we also have in the pre-development agreement, and item 2F talks about the affordable housing in that the town, the school district, and Basalt and Rural Fire District are interested in purchasing units, and just how some of the credits for other things will be addressed. There's a revised pre-development agreement in front of you, and I highlighted where the changes were made. There was just a couple of wording changes, and the more significant change was really in item H. And I had in the cover to the cover explained what the language was H in the revised language in the pre-development agreement on page 2 on H. All it does is kind of include the estimate of how much it's going to cost to do the financial analysis and how much money we spent to date, but it keeps the existing framework, which is that the developer will pay for this financial analysis. So we're looking for approval of the pre-development agreement, and as Bruce indicated, we'd bring the financial piece back at your second meeting in September, and then in October, the town council would be looking at the PUD amendments.
Okay. So it doesn't really look like we have any public, but since we let the last crew have public comment, is there anybody out there that has any comments regarding this direction? Why not? You're here, you're a banker.
Where I live in Basalt, I actually live in the woods. I think that Bernie hit on some really important points, and that would be why on earth would we consider subsidizing a development that is more or less devastated our downtown? And how are those businesses going to feel when our town forgoes sales tax and whatever hit could possibly come about? I think that we'll have a lot of angry people here. Second, Gary hit on this, and that is there is a looming pending application right across the street known as the Tree Farm. How much commercial can we truly absorb in this valley, and over what time frame? And personally, I can choose not to shop at Willits, and I can forego this additional tax. But let's just say I do. I don't really appreciate an additional tax for a big box scenario in which I live in this particular portion of the valley, because I don't want big boxes. I want small town character. I want a mountainous community. I want parks and open trails, and as Larry pointed out, this PIF will allow or will prevent our open space acquisitions potentially by reducing that fund through their subsidy. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
Anybody else out there have a thought? Okay. Yeah, Tom.
I just want to say that I think you're going in the exact right direction as you identify the validity and the amount of the gap. You know, that will certainly help us to make the decisions. Also, I have a lot of questions for the developer as far as the gap in what they can charge in order to fill these spaces they want to build. And I agree, hopefully they won't be big boxes. You know, they'll be great little stores, but I'm in favor of certainly analyzing this further, and I move to approve a resolution number 44, and I'm looking forward to the additional information so that we know if we're doing the right thing with the PUD and also with the PIF. I'm going to be curious to ask. I'm sorry. I'm going to be curious.
One second, Herschel, did you make a motion?
I did.
So this should be either seconded or not. You can
Yes.
continue
Then you
discussion.
stop after that and wait for a second.
Okay, I will
Is
wait
there
for a
a
second.
is there a
No, I just had a question for Tim. I
Well,
can
let's
tell
wait.
later.
Let's wait for the discussion part. Is there a second?
It doesn't foreclose further discussion.
Right.
I would second it.
Okay.
Thank you, Bernie.
Now we get the further discussion part. Now.
No, I was just a part of what will help us understand the validity of the PIF thing is the gap between what you can charge if for rental, to cover your expenses of building and not attract the tenants you want, the not big guys. And then also, if there's a shopping problem for people, if one store next door or on the next street from the other has a different sales tax, do they notice, do they care? I mean, these are the kind of things I'm going to be asking next time.
Yes, sir.
On the affordable housing, I'm not clear on this. We may look tonight, we will certainly look at some point at changing our affordable housing code. Does this say anything that protects us in our ability to, they've got certain concessions on affordable housing, they've got certain, rights and demands, but now we're looking at 91,000 new feet. Is any of that going to be able to be subject to our new code, whether I think it's tending toward liberalization, if anything?
So the existing square footage is covered with the existing mitigation requirements. So, round numbers, you're talking about the 50 units that have a building permit in and another 6 plus these 4 units that they have to build for the town and the fire district. Under the new square footage, what we've asked them to do is to show what is required under the current regulations in place today, and then to show what the requirements would be under the proposal that we're considering. So I hope that makes it sound.
Legally, an application is subject to the rules in effect at the time the application is submitted.
So those might be more stringent than our future action.
Depends on what comes first.
But we let them take advantage of the code at the time that they're submitting. We're actually processing the code amendments ahead of when the town council is going to consider.
Okay, that answers my question.
Rob.
I think we know that these pre-development agreements can incite passion in citizens, and that's
no. You think?
We've heard from the other side of the equation, but I think we need to hear from Mike. What is the town signing up for if we're to pursue this?
Bruce to continue to do work, understanding that there's a sequence, and it's probably as Bruce described. You would want to know what your PIF is and the gap that you're filling before you would submit a PUD, and you're going to need to nail down what your affordable housing requirements are and have an understanding so that you can further define what your gap is. And you start with one piece and you get to the next piece. And so I look at it as just a set of sequential steps. And at some point, Bruce will have his analysis and we will either agree or disagree with it in terms of what he will be recommending to the town council. And that will probably be the trigger for whether or not they submit a PUD.
That's the number side, but we're also adding additional square footage.
Yeah,
changing the affordable housing stuff. So, what are we signing up for if we agree this tonight?
No commitments.
No, there's
no commitments.
Yeah, just continue to work. And I think the one thing that needs to be put out there is that the tree farm application has no limit on commercial square footages as it sets today. No limit on the combination of parcels. No limit on the size of a parcel that can be considered for commercial development. And they basically already given away 3% PIF to them with the argument from the developer, it equalizes what sales tax, but yet understand that 3% can only be spent on improvements that directly relate to that development. It doesn't get shared with the town. And so while that's sort of what people think is happening, that's not what's happening at all. It's actually allowing that developer to have an advantage over any other developer in the area.
Well, I mean, I have some reservations as to the full slate of what we're being asked for, but I do think we probably want to keep moving forward on it either way, so basically.
Well, I have heard a lot of kickback since we said, yeah, sure, let's go ahead and study this. And part of my own has to do with what Katie brought up and the issue of when we approved Willits in the first place, and we had a study done, and that study said that, yeah, that will bring tax revenue to you people who are counting beans, and it will shut your downtown down for 25 years if you don't have a recession. So for me to say, yeah, let's do another 100,000 at Willits when the downtown is groveling for attention from us, I have a problem with that. I have probably a bigger problem with the fact that we are testifying at Eagle County meetings that Ace Lane is out of control with his development and he is using a PIF. And for me, we have a lot of standing right now to go in there and say, look, you know, we are trying to save our downtown. We are trying to finish building out Willits. What are you doing? And for us to go in there, believe me, we will hear back from the citizens out there. We're going to go stand up in front of Eagle County commissioners and say, Ace Lane's deal is bad, but ours is good. I get problems with it. I think we're on just generally a development train wreck in the whole Mid-Valley, and I think that I don't want to be on that train myself, but I can certainly understand and hold no judgment if other people want to see the direction this is going, but I feel like I don't want to spend any more money on this. I feel like the people in this community are kind of sick of this whole direction that we are going and Eagle County is going. That's where I am. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
What happened to Mark? Did he have to leave?
Read to it,
Read to pass.
He was so depressed over the meeting.
Okay, we are going into a work session. We're going to have a work session.
Do you want to do just one of them?
Yes.
Can we do schmoozer?
Hold on. We are going into a work session. The remainder of this agenda is a council work session. Work sessions are public meetings, and we encourage the public to attend to gain insight into town council's work. Work sessions typically do not have any action items, thus we won't be holding any typical public hearing and public comments. For that reason, since this is a town council discussion, we will limit public comments. The goal of this portion of the meeting is to bring council up to speed on items they will consider at a future legislative meeting and to give town staff direction. Our legislative meetings occur on the fourth Tuesday of every month. On rare occasions, we will take action during a work session on items that are time critical. And I am hereby saying that we are only going to talk about the Basalt Avenue underpass financing and the Affordable Housing Code amendments and town unit selection criteria shall be moved to a future meeting. Lewis.
So Lewis and Mike Fowler. Mike Fowler is the one that helped design the Basalt Avenue underpass and helped us with the bidding, and Lewis is our new town engineer. And we have been working on the Basalt Avenue underpass ever since the bids were open, talking with CDOT, Brian Killian in particular, looking at what the alternatives were, looking at the bids, finding out what the variances were. I'll have them talk about the variances. I just talked with Brian Killian this afternoon. One of the problems that we perceive is that while we think there is additional money that's available, as we raise that money and as it becomes publicly known what we're raising, our bids will go back to that number. So to try to figure out as we rebid it, how to do it in a way that brings the number down both on cost and increase the revenue at the same time. Brian Killian was able to identify a number that CDOT thought was available that we could go after, and it ranges from a 6-digit number to a 7-digit number that we think is available. So that's all I'm going to say about the numbers related to additional monies.
Thanks, Mike. Mayor Whitsitt, members of council, I'm Louis Meyer, and Mike Fowler is here with me this evening. Mike was our project manager, project engineer on the project, and I think we'd like to walk you through the process we use to go through the bidding process and kind of what your options are going forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, Louis. Yeah, just to step through, and I know we're getting late here, so I'll try not to.
Yeah, but we look good. We're still frisky. It's fine.
I'll try not to get into into the details here. But we've been working on this project since last August. We started the design, and at that time, it was the Basalt pedestrian underpass project. I know that question has come up a few times. Have we looked at the pedestrian overpass? I would say that was considered back in 2011 during a conceptual alternatives analysis. I think the consensus at that time was that the underpass was the desired option. And like I said, when we started last year, that was what we started with. So we worked through the design, worked through the public process, met with all the stakeholders, advertised the project in, I believe it was the end of June, first part of July. Put it out to bid for almost 5 weeks, which was a pretty generous bidding period. Typically those are on the minimum of 3 weeks, but just the way that the timing worked. It was out to bid for 5 weeks. We advertised the project locally in the newspaper, regionally through the Western Colorado Contractors Association, and also on the Front Range through an online and printed service over there that contractors subscribe to. So we felt like we tried to get the project out there in front of as many people as possible. We prepared an engineer's estimate with the last set of plans that we distributed to at that time Larry and the other stakeholders. The engineer's estimate was prepared using multiple sources of unit price information. We looked at unit prices from CDOT, from their construction projects. We looked at similar projects, the Aspen Airport Business Center project, similar type of construction, it's about as close as you can get as far as the type of project goes. And other local projects, and also talk to suppliers on some of the specialty items. And prepared our cost estimate based on that information. Our estimate was a little over $5.1 million. Open bids on July 31st. United Companies was the apparent low bidder at $7.2 million. And Gould Construction also submitted a bid, and they were at $7.5 million. So that's what got us to this point. Like Mike said, we've also had some conversations with Brian Killian at CDOT. Brian has been the local agency liaison. This project is being funded partially from CDOT funds, so we've been working closely with CDOT on this project. In the memo, we discussed 3 basic options that we think that the town has at this point. Again, this is based on what Brian has told us. Option 1 is that the town can accept the current low bid and commit to funding the project. And that commitment it's a letter to CDOT saying that the town is committed to making up the difference. Option 2 is the town can reject the bids and re-advertise the project. And option 3 is the town can reject the bids and cancel the project altogether. So those are some of the options going forward. Just a little bit on each one of those options, and this is all in the memo, so feel free to cut me off if you've already read this and you want to get home.
Well, can I just say, I did read it because this is like a big, huge deal for me.
Yeah.
If we could get to your recommendation of what we do and why. Because I did talk to Louis a little bit, talked to Mike a little bit about this, and it seems like there's only really one obvious, well, not one obvious, one path that seems like smarter than some others. But what's your thought? What do you think we should do?
Well, I'll chime in, and we'd like to hear your concerns and what your priorities are as well, or the questions. The biggest concern I had approaching the bid date was the lack of interest from bidders. I went through and looked at our contact information from bidders that in the past, Western Slope-based bidders, regional bidders, and even bidders from the Front Range, and there was about 22 companies that I would feel that are qualified to do this and ordinarily would be interested. As we got closer to the bid and we weren't sure how many would bid the project, there was 6 or 7 that were plan holders that could have been general contractor bids. Mike, even a few days before the bid opening, was concerned that we may only have one bid, and then a few days before the bid opening, another bidder showed interest. Well, why is that? Why did we only have 2 bidders? Market conditions are hard to gauge in an engineer's estimate. I think we're seeing 2 phenomenons. The first phenomenon is there aren't a lot of civil infrastructure contractors left standing in this valley and in the Western Slope after 2008. And we're just finding that in a lot of projects we're bidding. The second phenomenon is the Front Range contractors are very, very busy, and we don't see that changing. And so we just didn't have a good pool of contractors to bid from. Having said that, the option that I think is most feasible is you have to reduce that gap in funding. And I think you can do that a couple of ways. One, we can rebid the project and do some value engineering between now and when we advertise again to recognize that right now it's over your budget. Unfortunately, we can't do that by awarding the contract as is because the CDOT process precludes us from value engineering. We can't do that. If we re-advertise, we can do a value engineering process, see where the numbers were high, and we have some pretty good ideas where they were high, and work on those with the funding partners and re-advertise. The other thought is to re-advertise during a period when people aren't so busy, maybe the winter time, when people are looking for work to start the spring construction season, give them a longer period of time. And finally, to work with the funding partners that Mike has been working with to see if there's any more funds that can be brought to the table so that we shrink that gap.
Yeah.
So I've been dealing with this world and CDOT land and Dog Park and everything else, and one of the things that I look at when I'm looking at every single line item is there's some major differences between the 2 companies on certain items, and that always gives a little thing in my mind that they were busy and they just didn't really look at the project well enough to do it right. I mean, to have a $1 million mobilization charge, that's astronomical. I mean, there's no way you can estimate a $1 million. That's a catch-all for all the stuff that they didn't hit in their bidding of the other items, so they don't come in under budget. And so I definitely feel, my opinion is to do some value engineering. I think there's definitely some we can do to look at ways to bring this down. And I do believe to go out to bid when they're not as busy. It worked relatively well. It worked, at least we got a bid in, for Elk Park. It was the same CDOT type of world to deal with. It gives them more time to really look at it, and it does give them the opportunity to think, I don't have to start it this fall. I can start it next spring. So I can bring all my resources to bear next spring. So I mean, my approach would be to, to do some value engineering, rebid it, give it a longer period, rebid it when it's slower, and really delve into some of these numbers to kind of try to understand, there was it wasn't like they were both high on so many. It was like one was really high and the other one was not so high. And it was separate from the two different ones, and that's just not usual. So I don't usually see that big of a spread between two companies bidding. The material costs are material costs. So why were those there? And I don't expect you to give me an answer because it's really difficult to do, but that would be my recommendation.
And to follow up with what Gary's saying, I support that. And is it also possible, I think I've asked somebody, if you can do out-of-state bids to like places where they ain't busy at all?
It's really hard.
Can you get out-of-state bids, or will CDOT not allow that?
One of the things Mike and I have had conversations about is the project falls into I don't know if sweet spot is the right terminology, but a range that it's not big enough to attract the very large contractors, and yet it's too big for a lot of the local contractors who just can't bond that amount, and there's not many left standing. There is no guarantee that we would bid this winter with a lot more interest. I think there would be. I think typically folks are looking for more work to start the year, but there's no guarantee that given the size of the project that we would have the same result today.
But what was the answer on out-of-state bidders? I missed that.
Out-of-state bidders, I honestly think it's not big enough to attract.
They're allowed to bid. They are allowed to bid.
They would be allowed to bid if they're on CDOT's pre-qualified. The contractors allowed to bid on this have to be on CDOT's pre-qualified list.
Well, can we just tell everybody that's pre-qualified about it when you go back out? Even out of state is automatically included in their pre-qualified. Okay. All right then.
Well, and I think one thing we have to do is, we have to be prepared to look for more money. I mean, we really
Prepared to do what, Gary?
To look for extra money, because I don't believe we're going to magically see 5.1, even with some value engineering and working with other things. I mean, I have a feeling it's coming in, and maybe we can get it to 6. But I think we got to figure out ways to raise some more money. And but I don't want to say that now, because let's go out to bid and see. But I'm pretty prepared to go crawl for some more money.
I did want to acknowledge that in the audience is Chip Bear with the Fairville Bidder United Companies. Just want to acknowledge Chip is here.
And I would like to add too that I think both contractors that bid on it are very competent, qualified contractors. So, I just wanted to put that in there.
I think if the number came in closer, we would be going under contract and trying to value engineer and moving, because both companies to me, I know both of them, and they're fine. I mean, they could do the job. It's just way. It's not just 10% higher.
Are you saying something?
I would like to.
Okay.
You have paper in the air.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, Gary and I aren't going to stop talking, apparently.
Mike wrote us, I thought, a very good
email presenting obstacles and then giving us a list of political alternatives other than, I guess, rebidding. I forget what he wanted, but there was a decision tree of other political decisions. Is this the time that we need to have that discussion, or is it worth investing the time to see if we can squeeze more money out of our partners?
What I would suggest is we have until August 28th in which to reject the bids. Give us another 2 weeks so that we can talk a little more with CDOT, a little more with our funding partners, think about it a little more, and then come back and have a discussion on the 25th.
Is it problematic or even illegal to figure out with the bidders? Okay.
Yes.
Before you go back out.
Easy answer there. Yes.
I just really, I mean, I know that this could be helped because of just the economy and construction and everything, but I mean, it's been 3-4 years. I mean, I ran on this because I really don't want to see a smashed kid out there on Highway 82, and there's no money, there's no amount of money that can bring a kid back, and we got to figure out a way to do it. Yeah.
What I heard was that the overpass was looked at and then discarded. Is it time to look at an overpass as a much less expensive way to save that smashed kid, even though aesthetically it is not making a very great statement.
And you got to
about
start
the
in
town.
different states to get it.
I mean, there's the Wingo Avenue Bridge that works.
But you had the grade. What I was.
Do you know how far back those start from the cross?
I think we looked at when we do overpasses, you know, you basically, the utilization goes down because you have to go up and over and down. Where the underpass was perfect because the way they designed it was straight through.
It is the most desirable in my mind.
But then you would
question.
still have the people that are trying to cross the street
Yeah.
at the bad spot, and that's the biggest of. I think personally, working to this solution is to see, and then if we don't get the right bids or we don't get the money, that's when you have to go to plan B.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we let Mike stir this a little while and come back to us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for staying. It was fun,
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Was it not fun?
Thanks for joining us the whole time.
Yeah.
Great meeting.
Okay. I have had about enough. Is there a motion?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
9:23, you lose.